In high school, I was a loner. Back in those days, I only had one friend. Our friendship had started early in life, and because of our weird quirks, we only had each other during those rough 4 years. Since this happened a while ago, I feel safe finally writing down this story. My friend Jay doesn't even seem to remember any of it, which I'm rather thankful for. We've kept in contact, but after school, we've went different ways in life. I check up on his social media accounts and it looks like he's doing well. He turned into a well-adjusted member of society. I think I can forgive him for almost letting me get killed all those years ago. Jay lived a few houses down from my place, so we walked to school every day. We would have walked home together as well, but I had a part-time job most nights. My mother supported us on her own. Picking up a few work hours to buy myself school supplies was the least I could do. Most nights I spent at my job or trying to catch up on homework. On Sundays, Jay and I would play our own role-playing games that started off as D&D, but over the years turned into something with rules, lore, and NPCs only we understood. I was rather happy in those days, daydreaming about new adventures for our characters to go on Sunday nights. I looked forward to it the entire week. I really didn't have much time for other friends or much else besides my job, schoolwork, and our storylines. For the first 3 years, I thought Jay was happy too. I noticed his plots and ideas for our roleplay started to get darker, and soon I found myself passing on suggestions to add in some sexy NPCs that only existed to be rescued. And no, his character could not build a harem. He seemed annoyed by my refusals, but never really forced the ideas. Because I was so busy after school, Jay started to drift away. He eventually found someone who would humor his weird tastes. At first, I was glad to see Jay so happy and finally making a new friend. He was so awkward, I was worried he would go the full 4 years only having me for company. But very soon, I started to get a bad feeling from who Jay befriended. Jay introduced me to Mike, and we all had the same common nerdy interests. The more time I spent with Mike, the more I didn't like him. He liked to make nasty comments for attention. He was always ready to challenge people to get into some sort of debate. He was openly a creep to any of our female classmates, and I do believe he got a 3-day suspension for wearing an anime hoodie with very questionable faces printed on it. I did not like Mike at all, but Jay did act happier around his new friend. I decided to go against all the red flags about Mike. When they both invited me over to Mike's place on a rare Saturday I had free, I went. The plan was to stay over to play video games all night. I was going to give them both this one chance. If Mike was too unbearable, I would ditch him. I hoped he would be better if it was the 3 of us. Maybe the attention-seeking and awful sex-focused comments would be toned down. Aside from literally giving all the warning signs, I had really started to worry about Jay getting so hung up about not having a girlfriend yet. I always told him it wasn't a big deal. You didn't need to hook up with someone in high school just for the sake of hooking up. The right person would come at the right time. He never listened. The more time he spent with Mike, the more bitter they both became towards girls not giving them the time of day. I really should have stayed home that night, but I guess we've all done dumb stuff in our teen years. The start of the night wasn't terrible. Not pleasant, but not as bad as I thought it would be. Just 3 guys hanging out trying to beat each other in random fighter games. It had gotten late and we ran out of soda to drink. I asked Mike if there was anything left or if he wanted me to walk down to the corner store and buy some more. I knew it would still be open. At that time, I didn't know why Mike looked a little worried when I offered to leave. No, it's fine. We have some in the basement. We have a fridge down there for junk and stuff," Mike quickly said while Jay was nodding. I felt odd. They were both just standing there looking at me, as if they had something planned. "Can you come down to the basement and help me carry up some? The light broke, so it's dark. Jay would need to sneak down and jump out of something. Maybe a prank to film to put online later." "All right, I'll help." Whatever, Let them scare me. If that's the worst they had planned for the night, I was cool with it. In fact, I wanted to see how they planned to spook me. I followed Mike and Jay stayed behind. Just as I thought, we carefully started down wooden creaking steps. It was so dark I kept one hand on the railing and the other one along the wall so I wouldn't get lost. I thought it would smell dank or musty, but it smelled sharp. Like fresh paint. That was weird. I still wasn't worried or questioning anything. I followed the sounds of Mike's footsteps through darkness. I took small half steps to avoid bumping into anything in the dark. I paused when I no longer heard Mike and was completely blind. The stairs took a sharp corner coming down so the light from upstairs didn't reach far. I had already walked far enough to be lost. "Mike," I called out, wondering what the hell their deal was. If they were going to scare me, go ahead and do it already. I called his name out once more before my world exploded into stars and pain. The bastard had hit me across the head with something hard. I was out cold from it. I awoke, head throbbing. My mouth felt dry and the room was spinning. It took me a while to recover enough to see what the hell was going on. I had to keep one eye closed from the pain. The entire basement was full of candles. Even the soft light was too bright for me. I tried to move my arm but found it stuck. Both my legs were stuck as well. With a few more minutes, I was fine enough to look down. I was taped to a chair. Fresh red spray paint was underneath my feet. I followed the lines and groaned when I saw what it was. I thought Mike was a dumbass, but I didn't take him for a dumbass who believed in the occult. If you believe in ghosts and spirits, all the power to you. But when you painted a pentagram in the cement floor of your basement and lured a classmate down there to do who knows what with, then, well, you have a problem. On the other side of the poorly drawn pentagram, Mike and Jay stood wearing dark robes. Another figure stood against the back wall, hidden mostly by the darkness. I had no idea who else they got in on their stupid plan. "Be honored, pitiful human," Mike said in a very poor dramatic voice. "You have been chosen to—" "Guys, please, this is really stupid. Just let me go and I won't tell anyone. I'll just—" "Silence." Mike did not appreciate me butting in. He shouted, hands raised and shaking. It was honestly pretty awkward. I know he just smashed something against my head, but in that moment I wasn't at all scared of him. I found him just sad. The fear spiked through my body just a little after he fumbled inside his robes to pull out a kitchen knife. This was getting ridiculous. "Jay, stop him!" I croaked out. They had wrapped a lot of tape around my wrists and ankles. There was some give, but I couldn't get myself free. I really didn't want to believe this was happening, that I was taped to a chair in a schoolmate's basement about to be a sacrifice to a lame ritual. I was going to die for no reason. I had cut off Mike speaking, so I didn't even know what this ritual was for. I kept looking up, and in the darkness I saw the other figure. They were so still, I was starting to think that it was just a spare robe hung up on the wall. I couldn't imagine that Mike could get a second person in on this. I desperately wanted the whole thing to be a joke, and some sort of payback for not hanging out with Jay enough. When Mike stopped in front of me, I could tell by the look in his eyes this wasn't a joke at all. He brought the knife closer to me. I was sweating and felt like I was going to puke. I did the only thing I could think of in that moment. When his hand was close enough, I took a bite out of it. Mike screamed, shaking his hand free. I had drawn a bit of blood and he dropped the knife. Clutching his hand as blood dripped onto the ground, he looked at me with shock, then fury. This was not according to plan and he was pissed. He wanted me scared and begging for my life, not fighting back. Snatching up the knife again, I got ready for his next move. Jay was frozen to the spot. His hands raised as if he wanted to say something, to stop the whole thing, but was too much of a coward to stand up to Mike. To my confusion, the robed figure in the darkness behind him started to move. They walked past him toward us. Jay didn't even look at them. "That's enough," an unfamiliar voice came from the figure. With one swift strike, they had knocked Mike to the ground. Being as large as he was, it was a feat of strength. I heard Jay gasp as he took a few steps back. Mike dropped his knife when he had been knocked aside. He looked up at the figure, very hurt and confused. "Who the hell are you?" Wait, this person wasn't with them? Then why did they wait until now to help? How come they didn't stop this whole thing before I got knocked upside the head? I felt a little better, but was glad for the hope of rescue. The figure pushed the hood back, revealing bright red messy hair. A shade of red you can only get through dye. I couldn't tell their gender from their sharp face. I let out a small inhale when I saw that the right side of their lips were torn and scarred, making them look like they had a grim smile. "Listen, kiddos, I don't give a shit if you kill your little friend, but doing a ritual like this is a problem. I mean, really? Have you ever had a smart thought go through your head before? All you have is spilling of virgin blood and some summoning words like Ultras Various. You don't even have a name of the demon you're summoning. Without that, you'll bring any creature forward and you can see how that's a very bad idea. It's people like you, which is how every endless creature got onto this world years ago and nearly ended everything." I wasn't even the target of the lecture, but even I felt the second-hand guilt over how stupid they were being. I didn't even believe in demons or summoning, but I would side with this stranger. On the very small chance of supernatural stuff being real, you don't want to mess around with it if you don't actually know what you're doing. "Could you?" I started to ask if I could get some help to get the hell out of there. "We know what we're doing, and you didn't even say the word right for being a smartass. It's Alertus Viaris," Mike shouted from where he was knocked aside. He honestly didn't say the words any differently aside from putting more spirit into saying them. "We're summoning a succubus. We have a name with a demon, so get the hell out of my basement." "Mike, please, maybe we should stop all of this? We have a witness after all," Jay said meekly, trying to get everything calmed down. "Oh? You think I'm not saying them correctly? You piece of human trash. My kind made up those words. They don't mean anything. They just plucked out anything that sounded nice and bonded them to a summoning, you dumb shit. You could sneeze Alertus Viaris and it would still count." The stranger was shouting, getting heated. I was starting to wonder if this was some sort of really heavily involved roleplay Jay and Mike had someone else in on. Because this had to be a joke, right? This person thought they weren't human. Aside from the unnatural hair that could easily be explained, they looked as human as the rest of us. I started to try and get my arm free, knowing that I wouldn't get any help from the others. I almost felt it wiggle free when I looked down at the summoning pentagram Mike had painted and wondered if there was any paint you could buy that glowed, because the red paint was in fact glowing. I was the first to notice, but soon everyone else had looked down to see the source of the dim light. Jay had started to go over to Mike to help him up. Everyone froze when the glowing appeared. The stranger's foot came out from under the robe and started to smudge the blood that had dripped from Mike's hand. They were wearing a pair of black high heels, so I figured they were a girl. The glowing was starting to get bright as the red head looked over at Mike and his bloody hand. "You're trying to summon a succubus because you're both virgins, right?" She didn't sound impressed at all. It sank in. All they needed was virgin blood and to say the summoning words. I guess you had to repeat the words 3 times, and between their banter they had. No one had time to reply. A sudden explosion of air knocked us all off the glowing summoning area. I hit the wall very painfully. The wooden chair I had been taped to must have been old because it broke into pieces by the force of slamming into the wall. The stranger was thrown across the basement and sent into a chest freezer. Mike and Jay were tossed towards the area near the stairs. A bone-chilling roar sounded as the top half of a creature rose from the floor. It wasn't the succubus, that much was certain. Its head almost looked like a dog. Massive horns lined its jawline. Heat came from the monster that was slowly clawing its way out of the ground. Dark fur acted like a mane. One clawed front leg came out, then another. The thing was far too big for the basement. We would all be crushed if it came out entirely. I couldn't do anything because of my pounding head and utter disbelief of what I was seeing. Mike was getting a little bit braver, or he snapped. He stood up laughing, arms stretched out again. "Behold, I am your master. Now," the creature didn't give time to let him speak. It knocked Mike aside with his powerful claws. Blood splashed across the basement and Jay screamed. We all knew Mike was dead before he even hit the other wall. It turned its head towards the screaming Jay. I opened my mouth, wanting to stop what was going on to happen, but couldn't even let it squeak. With one swift movement, Jay was swallowed whole. The next few seconds, the world came crashing around me. Literally. The beast tore through the floor and shot up into the ceiling. Debris crashed down, and by some miracle I didn't get hit. The dust didn't even settle when the stranger yelled in mad fury and started to make her way over to the ruined middle of the floor. She kicked aside hunks of ceiling, coughing while looking so angry I was almost more scared of her than the creature that had just shot up through the ceiling and, by the sound of things, out through the house. I had been able to pry myself from the chair pieces. A leg was still taped to my ankle. "What?" she screeched, causing me to press myself against the wall. Her face was twisted in a red fury. I could feel heat coming from her, and in that moment, I knew she wasn't human. She hadn't been concerned about Mike killing me, but I still felt like I needed to at least try asking for her help. "Are you strong enough to kill that thing?" I asked, going out on a limb. She looked angry, so I kept talking, trying to get to my point before she stopped me. "Jay is my best friend. He was just eaten by that thing. You see, his little brother disappeared when they were 3 or 4. His parents can't take another kid missing, so please get a part of his body from his stomach or any proof he's dead." I didn't think she could even listen, but her face softened a little. "I don't work for free. I'll be able to ask anything of you for this favor." I don't know if it was because of the sudden crazy situation, or if I just became numb to everything. I didn't think of the repercussions of this deal. I just nodded. I stood, my entire body in pain, and trying to figure out how to get out of the ruined basement. The stairs had been damaged and collapsed. It was really a miracle I was still alive. The stranger walked over gracefully on top of the rubble in those heels of hers, and lifted me onto her shoulder without me being able to stop her. She was pretty strong for how skinny she was. I felt a lurch in my stomach. She had easily jumped out of the basement and onto the first floor. She made a mad dash to follow the path of destruction to find the creature. We found it in the middle of the road, knocking parked cars aside. I was tossed aside onto the lawn, and she ran forwards with no fear of what she was facing. The thing was huge. I wondered why no one had come outside their place to see what was going on. All the houses looked dark and empty as a monster roared and swung a massive tail around, knocking aside trees. I had no idea how she was going to be able to beat this thing. It was at least 10 times her size. Kicking off her heels and tossing off the dirty and torn robes, she had no hesitation leaping up to kick the creature under one of its red eyes. I heard a sickening crack as it roared in pain and stumbled sideways. I had no idea who she was, but it was clear she was strong. I had a brief ray of hope before everything came crashing down. That huge mouth opened again, rows and rows of white sharp teeth. She didn't even have time to move before it came down on her, swallowing her whole the same way it ate Jay. I sat on the grass, mind blank, not wanting to believe what had just happened. I just stared as the creature started to back down the road, tearing into cars in its path. I felt tears start to come to my eyes. I had completely given up in that moment. I wanted this whole thing to be a bad dream. If that thing turned around to come and eat me too, I would let it. I just wanted this all to end. Suddenly, the creature started to roar and screech in pain. I jumped and tensed up at the sound. My jaw dropped as I watched it fall to its side, legs flailing, tail thrashing. The sounds of pain were deafening and the worst thing I had ever heard in my life. The monster's stomach suddenly burst open and spilled gore, and to my shock, a tall red-headed girl with my friend under her arm. I had no idea how she did it, only that she had gotten them out of the stomach of the beast. The thing stopped moving a few seconds after its stomach had been ripped open. My legs started to move, and I found myself racing over to see if she was all right. Aside from being covered in God knows what, and annoyed, she looked fine. Jay was whole, but not breathing. She set him down, and I skidded to a stop. I took my friend in my arms, completely forgiving him for everything that had happened. The tears came in silent sobs. Feeling a sudden burst of heat, I looked over to where it was coming from. The heat was warping the surrounding area of my savior. The gore and stomach fluids were burning off her skin and clothing that apparently was heat-proof. Anything that didn't get burned away dried. It smelled awful, but I guess it was better than being covered in slimy gunk. "I'm a fire-based creature," she explained and directed her eyes to Jay in my arms. "Shouldn't you be doing CPR?" Mouth open, I looked at her. I didn't even consider that Jay could still be saved, but he had only been in the monster's stomach for a few minutes. Gasping, I set him down and was suddenly very thankful for the mandatory yearly first aid classes. It was a miracle Jay started to cough and sputter a few minutes after. Jay was in such a state of shock he just sat up, clutching his knees to his chest and started to rock. I didn't blame him at all. When I knew he was all right as he could be in such a situation, I went over to the one who saved him. She was waiting and had collected her high heels. Thank you, Miss Jake, and you're very welcome. Now, I wonder what I should ask you for payment for this. I did get your little friend back. I wonder. Maybe your teeth? I like human teeth. Or perhaps..." To my stress, she started to list off a great deal that I couldn't live without. I don't know if she was just saying things to scare me, but it was working. "I want your sweater," Jake finally said, and I couldn't help but do a double take at her. I was wearing a band hoodie. The band was no longer together, making it a collector's item, but they had never been that big. I've never come across anyone who knew who they were, let alone like my sweater. Jake looked down at me, a smug grin on her face. I guess I could give up the sweater considering what else she could ask for. The moment I handed it over, she tossed it on and took a deep, creepy inhale to smell it. What a nasty human smell. I don't get stuff like this often. Anyway, I came out pretty good, so I'm letting you off easy. That monster your dumb friend summoned is good to chop up and make love potions and the like with. You know, like, what are they? Rhinos? How their horns are used to make medicine for old dudes to get it up? Yeah, it's like that. That thing got summoned, that did get summoned, is a sex demon because its parts is used to make sex-related medicine. It's worth a lot. Because I killed it, it's mine. Get it? I looked between Jake and the dead creature in the road. I almost wanted to laugh at the idea of it all. Instead, I just nodded and felt the tears coming again. I couldn't hold myself together after everything. Jake gave me an awkward pity pat on the shoulder and started to walk away from me. I hope we never see each other again. Have a nice nap. I didn't have time to figure out what she meant before everything went black. I woke up in the hospital. I had an officer explain to me that Mike was dead and Jay was in shock. According to him, a drunk driver had come down the street and crashed into his house. The car went through the house and into the basement after the floor gave in. Mike was the only one killed, and by some miracle we lived. I didn't correct him or ask him about any of the occult stuff in the basement. My injuries could easily be explained by the accident and what I remembered to be a weird dream because I was in a coma for a few days. I really wanted to believe that was the case. The only thing that made me slightly question if it was a dream or not is I'm missing my favorite band sweater. The whole thing was Ray's idea. Yeah, I had a hand in it, but I swear I had no idea what his plans were. Hell, I'm not even sure if he knew, to be honest. It was probably a year ago, give or take a month or two. I had a hard time making out his words at first because he was just so excited to the point of barely being able to form a legible sentence. The main thing I got from the phone call was to get to his house as soon as possible. He's usually a pretty composed guy, but something had him riled up, something serious. We had been friends since we were kids, ever since I helped him with a burgeoning bully problem in the 6th grade. Ray was really shy and quite small for his age, so the bigger kids would lay into him pretty good. I didn't know anything about him at the time, but he always sat alone at lunch. When Ronnie Blige and his goons started harassing him one day, I couldn't let that shit slide. I wasn't especially strong or outgoing myself, but I never could stomach the bigger kids hassling the smaller ones. As soon as they swatted his lunch off the table and pushed him to the ground from his chair, I ran over before taking the time to consider my actions. Now, I'm not gonna lie. I got my ass handed to me, but I stood my ground until Mr. Norris stepped in. He was the social studies teacher and was about as intimidating as a half-flattened grasshopper, but he was still an authority figure. I ended up suspended along with Ronnie and his friends, but it was enough to make them think twice about pushing Ray around anymore. After all, I did get a couple of good swings on him too. When I got back to school the following week, Ray couldn't thank me enough for stepping in when I did. We became pretty tight from then on. Jess was Ray's sister, and I developed a crush on her soon after my friend introduced us. Out of respect for my friend, I never acted on my feelings, but the friend zone knocked me out of the running anyway. The three of us spent a lot of time together over the high school years, and we managed to hold on to that friendship after they left for college. I never went to university myself. I was never the best student, due in part to my fairly erratic life at home. I won't get into specifics, but my parents' relationship was rocky at best. Of course, I wasn't exactly the sharpest tool in the shed either. When we learned the national anthem back in kindergarten, I wondered what a Donserly light was. Of course, I didn't ask anyone, no. I just assumed it meant really bright and started using that shit in sentences. Wow, the sun sure is Donserly today. Can I close the curtains? It's way too Donserly outside. Don't call me stupid, I'm Donserlier than you. Yep, I was about as Donserly as a cave in the middle of a moonless night. Though I wasn't particularly smart, I was always mechanically inclined, so I ended up working at a garage after school. Working on vehicles paid well enough for me to get my own place far away from my folks and carve out a decent life for myself. Ray dropped out of college after a couple of years, while Jess worked on her law degree for many years after. She always did like to argue. Ray was always quite the intellectual, but he claimed that school was just attempting to dumb him down. Were it anyone else who claimed that, I would have thought them way too arrogant for their own good. But not Ray. As soon as I pulled into the driveway, the garage door opened with my friend standing behind it. His house was nothing especially big or fancy, but it sat alone in a wide open area, with a long road that led directly to the huge carport that sat next to the house.
"This is gonna be the big one, brother,"
Ray said as he ran up to my car before I even had the chance to get out. "What's gonna be the big what?" I asked, chuckling at his childlike enthusiasm.
2 words,
he began to say, before being cut off by his sister pulling into the wide driveway. Jess was with her husband Elijah, who was riding shotgun. He was a pretty good guy, but I can't say I didn't hold just the slightest bit of jealous contempt for him. I'm fairly sure he knew how I felt about his wife, but he was cool enough to let it slide. Ray walked towards his sister and pulled her into a hug as soon as she got out of the car. He smiled at Eli and gave him an acknowledging nod, to which his brother-in-law returned the gesture. He waved us all to follow him into the garage, where he already had some fairly professional-looking blueprints spread across his work table. "You're not serious," Jess exclaimed after glancing down at the prints.
"I worked it all out last night,"
Ray replied with glee in his eyes. "Okay, you've officially watched entirely way too much Rick and Morty," I said, laughing out loud after I looked at the matte sketch of what was labeled Portal Gun. Eli laughed with me while Jess appeared to be trying her best to keep her composure.
"Look, I know it sounds crazy, but I swear to Christ it'll work,"
Ray said, looking between us. His voice sounded a bit pitiful, as we all had clearly hurt his feelings.
"Just trust me, guys. I'll make sure we're all partners in this. Just have faith in me."
"Ray, you're my closest friend. You know I've always got your back, but this is science fiction, not actual science." To call my friend a genius would be dramatically underselling his intellect. Though I had endless faith in his brilliant mind, I just couldn't wrap my far more simple mind around it. After dropping out of college, Ray started working on a variety of entrepreneurial ventures. I can't necessarily speak to what said work involved, since it's above my pay grade as well as my understanding. By the time he was 25, he held several patents and was worth more than $20 million. That's with only 2 years of college. For him to call this ridiculous idea the big one, I couldn't help but wonder what he considered big. This is exactly what motivated my next question. Are you sure you want to risk your reputation on something like this? He seemed to consider what I said for a moment. He was generally very quick-witted and rarely lost for words. Well, with us anyway. Even with all of his success, he was almost painfully shy and introverted. I was usually the one who he could confide in, which made this whole ordeal even more shocking. He was always close with his sister, and he even took to Eli pretty quickly. He tried to share his wealth with all of us, but Jess was already a very successful lawyer, and I was just too hard-headed to accept any form of charity. I did allow him to invest in my own garage, though. I couldn't rationalize just taking his money as a handout, but he was happy to be a partner in my maintenance shop.
This isn't about the money,
Ray said, breaking the silence that had begun to consume his garage. He looked at each of us with his eyes wide. There was a strange sort of desperation in his face that I had never seen before.
Nothing I have ever done has left a mark on this world. This,
he said, patting his hand on the blueprint,
is my legacy. This could change the world as we know it.
My mind was made up before I looked at Jess and Eli for confirmation. I still thought this was completely nuts, but I had always had my friend's back. I wouldn't change that now, even if I thought his genius was giving way to a touch of madness. Okay, I said, giving him half a smile. What do you need me to do? Ray lit up like a kid on Christmas morning, while Eli and Jess nodded their acceptance of whatever this plan held for them. Though mine would be the hands that would assemble this thing, according to my friend's instructions, I was unsure what roles Jess or Eli would play. For the most part, they had little to no involvement. I assumed Ray just invited them to be a part of it since they were part of our small circle of friends and family. The design was far simpler than I ever could have thought, but my friend had absolutely no doubt it would work. Some parts took some time to get our hands on, and others cost Ray an insane amount of money. He claimed he didn't care about the financial aspect, but I wasn't entirely sure I bought that. Still, I couldn't believe how much he was willing to pay for this ridiculous venture. I had never seen him so blindly driven before. Honestly, he scared the hell out of me sometimes. My friend had always been a calm and composed individual, but he completely lost his shit at times during this process. I had never seen this side of him before, and I even began to fear for his sanity. There were several times during those first few months where he would throw parts across the room or pound on the work table until his knuckles bled. There was something in his eyes at those times that caused me to feel very uncomfortable. He was like a man possessed, more so than one driven by a goal. After 3 months, we finally had our first attempt finished. When Ray aimed it at the wall and pulled the trigger, it did little more than lightly scorch the wood. He flipped out. He screamed at the top of his lungs and launched the gun at the concrete floor. He stomped his foot on it, still yelling and swearing so much that his words didn't even sound like any form of recognizable language anymore. He proceeded to beat and kick anything in sight. He punched the wall until the wood splintered from his blows. As soon as this legendary tantrum started, I got the hell out of there. I just walked around to the back of his house and lit up a cigarette while he tore his garage apart. After a while, his guttural blows didn't cause me to wince anymore, but it was probably a solid hour before he calmed down. "What the hell was that, man?" I asked when Ray finally walked out of the demolished garage.
I'm sorry,
he replied, staring at the ground to avoid any eye contact.
I've just put so much time and money into this. I can't fail.
Maybe you should just walk away from this for a bit,
No!
he screamed out as soon as the words left my mouth. Whoa now, I said, backing away from my friend.
I'm sorry. I mean, they won't, I can't stop now.
They won't? Who are they? Ray continued to stutter, but he wouldn't give me a straight answer. He told me he was not feeling very rational at the moment, and not to listen to any of his crazy words. I finally got him settled down, and he agreed to take a few days off to clear his head. I was trying to get him to drop this whole thing, but he wouldn't hear it. We didn't talk for a couple of weeks after that day. It was probably the longest I'd ever gone without talking to him, but he had freaked me out quite a bit. I had got him back into my regular schedule and resigned myself to just wash my hands of this whole ordeal. I felt bad for ditching out on my friend, but I wasn't going to take part in his descent into madness anymore. Just 2 weeks after his meltdown, Ray contacted me again. He apologized for the way he acted and practically begged me to come back and help him.
I worked it out,
he said in a trembling voice. I couldn't tell if he was just nervous about making this apology or if he was getting himself worked up again. After we talked for a little while longer, I agreed to give him one last chance. I can't say I was excited about the prospect of taking part in this endeavor further, but he was my friend. After another 2 months, Ray's portal gun was ready to be tested again. My whole body was shaking as he aimed the gun at the wall of his garage again, and my heart was racing. The device was simple in its design. It was almost shaped like a hairdryer that had cables that ran to the heavy backpack. It made me think of a bad cosplay attempt at a Ghostbusters proton pack. There were blinking lights and a couple of switches on the pack, while the gun itself had 2 knobs and a trigger. One knob was to adjust the diameter of the portal, while the other was to switch between entry and exit points. The toggles in the back were just to power up and activate the thing, and I'm pretty sure the LEDs were just for show. My friend asked me to flip the switches while he aimed the gun at the wall.
Here goes nothing,
he said with his eyes wide and manic. As soon as he pulled back on the trigger, a small glowing circle of orange light appeared on the wall. He turned the first knob and the light widened before my eyes. After he let off of the trigger, the circle of light changed to a perfectly round hole in the wall. He then turned the second knob and aimed at the opposite wall, leaving another equally round hole. There was nothing special about how the openings looked. There wasn't exactly an enter here indicator, but Ray expected that. He told me to just be sure I kept track of which portal came first. My friend grabbed a basketball from a box to the side of the workbench. He gave me a strange look with a crooked half-smile before he tossed the ball through the first hole. Sure enough, as soon as the ball went through the left wall, it came bouncing out of the right. Holy shit, I said in a monotone voice, as shock would allow me no more than that. After closely examining the basketball, Ray gave me a wink and ran towards the first hole. No, wait! I yelled, but he was running back through the right wall before I could even suggest that we run more tests first. He yelled out in a frantic and excited shriek after he arrived back on the other side of the room. We both laughed quite a lot when he thrust his arm through the left side and it popped right out of the opposing wall. You really did it, I said with a surprised smile.
We did it,
Ray replied with glassy eyes. He asked me to call his sister and ask her to come by. While we awaited her arrival, we conducted a few more tests. I tossed the basketball at the exit portal to see what would happen. And somehow, it couldn't even go through. It just bounced right back at us. We lobbed a variety of things through the origin hole, though we didn't need to prove that worked anymore. Honestly, we just had fun watching them go through one and pop out of the other. After a while, Ray flipped on the backpack switches and both walls returned to their previous state. Still in complete disbelief, I smacked my hands against both walls to find them completely sealed and solid. It would still be a few hours before Jess arrived, so my friend and I just kicked back and celebrated our success with a couple of cigars he had bought for this very occasion. He wanted to hold off on the champagne until his sister arrived, but we still cracked open a couple of beers and clinked them together before chugging down the deliciously cold brew. It was getting dark out when Jess and Eli finally pulled into the driveway. They didn't seem overly amused about coming out here, but they changed their tune after we gave them a demonstration of our accomplishment. They both just stared on with wide eyes and slack jaws as Ray strolled through one wall and out the other. They were at a complete loss for words until we popped open the champagne and passed around glasses. "I can't believe you actually pulled it off," Eli said, barely aware of the drink in his hand. "I always knew you'd change the world, little brother," Jess said with a wide smile. Ray was wearing a proud look on his face as he admired his own work.
"If it's like they said, you ain't seen nothing yet,"
he remarked halfway to himself. "That's the second time you've mentioned they. Who the hell are they, actually?"
"Huh?"
my friend replied, seemingly pulled from his own thoughts.
Figure of speech."
I studied his face for a moment. He didn't look like himself right then. His eyes were somewhat manic again, and his lower lip appeared to be twitching. "You okay, man?"
"Mm-hmm,"
he replied, not taking his eyes away from the portal gun that lay on the table. After a few minutes of an incredibly awkward silence that encompassed the room, Ray reached out and flipped the switches back to the on position. He slung the pack across his back and clutched at the gun in his hand. He turned to meet Eli's curious stare.
"Do you trust me?"
His whole body looked as though it was shivering slightly. I had no idea what had got it into him all of a sudden. I had assisted him on a number of projects over the years, from juicing up the turbo on his Mustang to helping him convert a single and cheap drone into something with an incredibly long range. He had so many projects over the years, I couldn't even guess how many different ideas he had, but I had never seen him like this. Eli looked at his wife and then over at me. He seemed uncertain and appeared to be looking for confirmation that he should indeed trust his brother-in-law. Jess just shrugged, but I shook my head. I wouldn't even trust my friend with how he was acting right now. I guess," he said, sounding very unsure whether this was the best response at the moment. Without another word, Ray quickly switched the gun's knob to the exit position. His expression grew even wider when he stretched it out in front of him, aiming the barrel at Eli's midsection. "Well, what are you doing, man?" Elijah said, backing away from Ray.
"This is gonna blow your mind,"
my friend said in a voice that had grown high-pitched and frantic. "Ray, stop!" I yelled out, but he pulled the trigger before I could attempt to stop him. Jessica screamed out in terror as her husband's eyes went wide and blank. I just stared in shock as the portal appeared to wrap around the center of his body that left the upper and lower level sections detached, held in place by the opening that glowed with a vibrant green light. I did not see the room behind Eli through the hole, but what looked to be a completely alien landscape. With the neon-like hues emitting from the void, it almost resembled gazing through night vision goggles. Jess tried to run to her husband, but I grabbed her arm and held her back. She beat on my chest while screaming out, "What did you do to him?" She yelled as much to me as her brother. I don't know. I don't know what this is." I needed her to know I wasn't a part of whatever the hell this was, but I was in complete horrified shock myself. Ray let the gun drop to the ground beside him, and he held his arms outstretched to his sides as something began to appear from within the portal in Eli's torso. "Oh my God," I said, as I watched two thin skeletal arms reach out and grip onto Eli's chest and upper thighs with six-fingered, elongated hands. As the creature forced its way out of Jessica's husband, the pressure from its limbs bent Elijah's chest and legs backwards into a horrifying sort of reverse sitting position. He appeared to float in midair, while the portal held the two halves of him together, though I heard the bone snap and tissue tear as a screeching face worked its way out of the hole. The head looked like a deformed human skull, with a greenish-gray skin tightly wrapped around it. The face split in the center to reveal long and widened teeth. As it shrieked, its whole head halved in the middle, making it look like a nightmare version of Pac-Man. It had no eyes, only the wide mouth and stretched skin that continued down to the emaciated and sunken chest that now forced through the void in Eli's body. My senses finally seemed to recover, while the thing was still attempting to escape into this world. I picked Jessica up and ran towards my truck.
No!
Ray screamed out while I was attempting to force the frantic Jess into the passenger seat.
There has to be two!
He yelled as he came running towards us. Behind him, I saw the beast fall to the ground after escaping through Eli's body. Though it lay on the concrete, seemingly exhausted from the transition, it looked to be quite tall. The eerily thin frame was almost humanoid, but each limb looked twice the length of my own. Its whole body looked like an elongated skeleton with that grayed green skin wrapped around the bones. Ray got to the side of my truck and was pulling on the door handle. I had locked it as soon as I got in, but he just kept yanking on it until it broke off in his hand. He screamed out again, and he barely sounded human anymore. He pounded on the window, instantly causing cracks to spiderweb across it. I kicked it into reverse and shot back out of the driveway, leaving my friend to fall to his knees. I took one final glance back to see the portal disappear and two halves of Eli fall to the ground. Clearly, flesh does not recover as well as brick and mortar with such things. Ray attempted to run after me as I sped away from his house, but even if he hadn't still been wearing the heavy backpack, I had the pedal pushed to the floor. Once I was sure I put enough distance between us, I called 911. I had no idea what to tell them, so I just reported a possible homicide at Ray's address. I didn't stop rolling until my truck was running on fumes. Jessica had been catatonic since she watched her husband quite literally fall to pieces before her eyes. But at least she was alive. I considered driving home, but I was certain Ray would go there first if he were searching for his sister and I. I pulled off the interstate to find gas stations and hotels right off the exit. My passenger was still out of it, so I checked us into one of the roadside motels after filling up my gas tank. I went ahead and just got one room with 2 beds, so I could keep an eye on her through the night. I didn't want to creep her out or make her feel like I was holding her hostage, but my head was still spinning from the evening's events. I still couldn't believe my friend had gone so far off the deep end. Had this been his plan all along? Had he just been using me to bring whatever the hell that was into this world? Jess just lay in the bed across from me, still shaking all over. I would have to try and get her help soon. Hell, I'd have to get myself help for that matter. Her body was faced away from me, so I walked over to where she lay to check on her. She was out, thankfully. I could only hope that rest would help her troubled mind. It was just when I was about to attempt to lay down myself that my phone rang. I was apprehensive at first, unsure if it might be Ray attempting to contact me, but no. Given the bizarre circumstances the police found when they arrived at my friend's house, I'd have to make a statement as to the events that took place. The detective told me they found some video footage at the scene, and I would be required to make a statement. He sounded confident that I wouldn't be facing any charges, but they needed to hear my account of what happened. I couldn't help but wish I had taken the time to locate the payphone before placing the 911 call, but I wasn't exactly thinking straight. I made arrangements to have someone pick up Jessica in the morning, at which point I would make my way to the police station. I was still very uncertain of what to expect, but I knew Jess was going to be in need of some serious psychological care. The investigator was actually far more understanding of my apprehension and concerns than I would have expected. An ambulance arrived at the motel just a couple of hours later. Jessica was still out of it, but the paramedics assured me that they would get her the care she needed. After they took off, I headed back towards the city I fled from only a handful of hours before. Having driven for longer than I realized the previous night, it took me a while to arrive at the station back in Ray's neck of the woods. My thoughts were all over the place, but I just wanted this nightmare to be over. Detective Leary was waiting for me in his office when I arrived. He was an older guy, but I think he appeared more aged than he really was. He had thin brown hair that had receded back a good bit. He wore a thick mustache and rimless glasses. He spoke in a friendly tone, but his expression appeared quite stern. There were 2 other individuals in the room when I walked in, but they showed no motivation to introduce themselves. They both wore dark suits and had a similarly cold expression on their faces. They were both maybe in their mid-30s. The shorter of the two had a shaved head, while the other sported a blonde buzz cut. Neither of them said a word while they just stared at the back of the room. The detective told me the two men were in charge of the investigation, though he would be the one asking the questions. I knew nothing about the room's inhabitants, but Leary came off a little intimidated by the duo in the nice suits. It's very possible he was just one of those particularly skittish people, but given the pictures on the walls of seemingly very important individuals shaking the detective's hand, I had to assume it was just that these particular men made him nervous. At the officer's request, I recounted the events of the previous day, along with the details of the project we had worked on the past few months. It was a grueling conversation, and retelling these facts caused me to physically wince multiple times. I don't think I had allowed myself to really take in everything that happened until this very moment. By the time I was finished with my story, I found myself just staring at the desk I sat in front of, barely holding on to my own sanity. Nobody said anything after I told my side of things, until Leary asked me to step outside for a moment. I shook my head to snap out of my vacant stare and just nodded to the man before walking out the door. A good 30 or 40 minutes passed before I was invited back in. As soon as I strolled through the open door, the two silent men walked quickly past me, without so much as glancing in my direction. "They seem friendly," I remarked to the detective before the two were out of earshot. "You have no idea." Leary went on to explain that the men in the finely tailored suits were against the idea of me seeing what he wanted to show me. He told me he thought I had a right to view the video footage they had found. "This may be tough to watch, and I'm sure you're going to need a truckload of therapy after this, so it's completely your call," he said, holding the remote control to the monitor that sat on the other side of his desk. I considered his words for some time before I reluctantly agreed to watch the tape. I wasn't quite ready to face the reality of everything that had occurred, but I had to know what happened next. As the video began to play, I wondered when exactly Ray had begun recording. I asked the detective to fast forward through the events I witnessed firsthand and basically cut to the chase. I stared on with wide eyes as the video sped through the horrific act that had been forced on Elijah. Poor guy didn't even have a chance. I have no doubt that even if he had denied Ray's question of trust, he would have still met the same fate. Leary started playing the tape again, and I watched my truck speed away from the house with my friend screaming out after me. The skeletal creature still lay on the concrete at the garage, while Ray erratically paced back and forward.
"There has to be two,"
he was muttering over and over to himself as he walked from side to side across his lawn.
"There's no time for more, no time at all,"
he continued, sounding more and more maniacal with every word.
"Just wanted to share with them. But no, they wouldn't. No time. Has to be two. No time now."
He went on, just repeating the same thoughts, each time more harried than the last.
"No time,"
he said somberly, as he came to a halt in front of the gray and green thing on the floor.
"Has to be done. No time left,"
he remarked one last time, before he picked the gun back up off the ground. It had been dragging behind him as he darted back and forth, still wearing the heavy backpack. He stared back into the camera that had apparently been mounted close to the rear of his garage. He didn't say another word. He just raised the gun up slowly and planted the barrel into his own mouth. Since he directed the portal into his own throat, I could not see the opening for him. He just stood there with his head tilted back while both of his arms dropped to his side and the gun fell back to the ground. For minutes, he just stared motionlessly up at the sky. I audibly gasped when the long, bony fingers reached out of his mouth. They gripped the sides of his face and forced the opening wider, splitting and tearing the flesh. I fought against the lump forming in my own throat as I looked on while Ray's face was ripped and his skull cracked and splintered. His neck bulged open and tore, while sharp twigs of rib bones pierced out of his chest. What was left of his head gave way as the thing forced its way out. Chunks of bloody meat and scarlet tissue fell to the ground, each part sounding more moist and sticky than the last. By the time the creature fell to the ground beside the other, which had only now begun to move, my friend was completely split apart from the abdomen up. He still stood in place, with his hands almost touching the ground as what remained of his shoulders now hung by his waistline. Leary turned off the tape after that last part, but I just stared blankly at the screen. He wouldn't give me any insight into the investigation, nor would he tell me if the creatures were still there when the police arrived. I was asked to sign an agreement that I would not speak of this, but I assumed nobody would believe me anyway. I kept my word until now. It's been about a year since that awful night, and I've been attending regular therapy since. Jess is still in the mental institution, but she finally started speaking again a few months back. I make sure to visit her at least once a week, and she's slowly coming back to herself, though I highly doubt she'll ever be the same as she was before all of this madness. I have no way of knowing whatever happened to the monstrous beings that were birthed through my friends by way of the portal gun I helped create. I can't speak to the location of said invention either. Whether it's connected or not, I've been receiving calls from Ray's phone the last few days. I finally broke down and answered it last night. I don't know how, but it was my friend's voice on the other end. He sounded different, which isn't surprising, as his head was fragmented into bony and bloody chunks. Somehow, I believe it was him, though I have no idea how that could even be possible.
2 more. Has to be 2 more.
I immediately hung up the phone and threw it to the ground. I stomped the damned thing with the heel of my foot until it was just a scattering of plastic and glass. I can't be sure of what those words meant, but I'm not sticking around to find out. I'm packing my shit and getting the hell out of Dodge. Hopefully, I can convince Jess to come with me. If I can even get her out of the institution she's in. Either way, I won't wait around long to see what happens next. I can't know what my friend's true motivation was behind all of this. Just please understand, I never would have let it go this far if I could have known what he intended. He said we would change the world together. As the title implies, I've spent the last decade of my life working in a tribal jail. When I first started, I was told 5 rules I had to follow to survive. These rules weren't for handling inmates or dealing with life as a CO. They were for how to survive the paranormal. I thought it was all bullshit and superstition. I could not have been more wrong. The first thing I noticed about this facility, it borders the start of a dense, ominous forest. When I arrived for my interview, I stepped out of my car and looked at the trees and hills behind the facility. It looked like they went on forever. The view was serene, and if I didn't know better, I would have thought the buildings in front of me hosted retreats and camps. The razor wire, however, quickly ruined the illusion. After my interview, it took me about 3 weeks before I got the call offering me the job. I came in for my orientation on a Wednesday. It was all the normal onboarding stuff. HR forms, uniform, and equipment issuance, facility tour, meeting my supervisor, and getting my training schedule. I got assigned to the graveyard shift, working Friday to Monday from 2100 to 0700 hours. Not the ideal schedule, but I was the newbie, can't really complain. I was told by the jail administrator, the warden if you will, that I was to report for my first day that Friday. I walked into the briefing room at 20:30 on the dot and took my seat.
"Hey, you the new guy?"
A deep, gravelly voice from in front of me said. "Yeah, that's me." I looked up to see a man standing in front of me. He looked like he was in his mid-20s, about 6 foot even and slim but well-built. Wore a plain black hat and had a nicely cropped beard. He looked at me with piercing green eyes, seemingly looking into my soul. "I'm Jay," I said.
I don't care. Once you're here for more than a month, then I'll care to learn for your name.
He then turned around and sat down in the chair in front of me. I looked around to see everyone else just talking and joking with each other like nothing had happened. "What the fuck was that about?" I whispered.
Don't mind Will. He's just tired of losing rookies.
A soft voice to my left said. When I looked over, I saw a woman sitting next to me.
I'm Val. It's your first day, right?
She said, extending her hand for a handshake. "Jay," I said. I shook her hand. If I had to guess, I'd say she was in her early 40s. Val was slender, had long brown hair styled into a tight bun. "Yeah, it's my first day. I had my orientation on Wednesday."
What'd you do before this?
"I worked security."
Nice. Have you worked graves before?
"Yeah. I actually was on graves before coming here, so hopefully the adjustment isn't too bad." Val opened her mouth to reply but cut herself off as we heard the door open and turned to see Corporal D walked in. Corporal D was an imposing figure, to say the least. He was 6'5" and had to be at least 270 pounds. He wasn't pure muscle, but sure as hell wasn't fat. He had a look to him that gave the impression he wasn't someone to cross.
"All right,"
he said with a deep, booming voice that commanded the attention of everyone in the room.
"Here's what we got going on today."
To give some insight, this is how a standard briefing goes. It usually starts with a general rundown of what happened on the prior shift. After that, the supervisor will typically give out the post assignments, followed by any special tasks or assignments if there is any. Most of the time, that's the end of it. The supervisor will ask if there are any questions, very rarely is there, and then dismisses us to go to the floor and start the shift. Sometimes, though, there is some housekeeping that needs to be addressed. This could be anything from addressing issues to brief training on a new policy or procedure. That's how that briefing went. Nothing exciting happened on swing shift and no special assignments. There was, however, an issue to address.
"So to address the elephant in the room, we have a rookie. Officer J, stand up and introduce yourself."
"Yes, sir," I said. I then rose from my seat and noticed everyone staring at me. Not sure of what exactly I was supposed to say, I managed to choke out, "Hi, everyone." I then attempted to sit back down before Corporal D stopped me, saying,
"Tell us a little about yourself. Have you worked in a jail before? Have you worked graves before? Do you believe in ghosts?"
I could almost see a sly smile on Corporal D's face. "I haven't worked in a jail, let alone been in one before. I have spent the last year working graves doing security work. As for if I believe in ghosts, no, I don't believe in ghosts or ghouls or things that go bump in the night. I'm not a kid." I smiled until I noticed everyone's faces go from smiling to serious. Corporal D looked at me and said,
"Oh, you will."
He then looked back down at his papers.
"All right, then. Everyone has their assignments. Officer J and Officer Will, stay behind. Everyone else, get to work."
Everyone but Will and I stood up and left the room. Not before a couple of mocking "somebody's in trouble" comments. Once everyone left, the room was silent. Will was the first to speak.
What did I do this time?
Corporal D narrowed his eyes at Will before cracking a smile.
"You kept bitching that the last rookie wasn't being trained right."
Because they weren't. I spent half the time untraining the bullshit they learned working on day shift. That is why we lost him.
Corporal D shot Will a look that reminded me of when your mom hears you swear.
"Well, I talked to the brass and got them to try it your way this time."
Will looked surprised.
What do you mean?
Jay is fresh blood. He hasn't had any prior training. This is your opportunity to prove that your way of training works. However, if you fuck this up, we'll both be held responsible. Understood?
Understood. Thank you for the opportunity, sir.
Jay, you will be attached to Will's hip. If he needs to shit, you help him wipe. Make sure you listen carefully to everything he teaches you. If you do that, then you'll turn out just fine.
Corporal D said before putting a 3-ring binder on the table in front of me.
This binder contains every policy, procedure, and schedule you need to know. Consider this an extra limb during your training. If you don't have it with you every day, then you ain't ready for work. Read every page carefully. Memorize it. I mean it, Jay. Read every fucking word.
Yes, sir. I promise I won't let you down. I'll read it on my weekends if I have to.
I hope not. I have you and Will work in general population tonight. Get acquainted, and don't be afraid to ask questions. Even the stupid ones. I can guarantee you can't ask anything more stupid than a lot of the questions inmates ask.
After that, Will and I walked out of the room. Is he always that serious? I asked.
Who? Corporal D? Nah. He just looks mean, but the guy's a teddy bear. It just takes a while for him to warm up to you.
When we walked to the entrance of H-Pod, I started to get nervous. Damn, it's nice out here, I said in an attempt to clear my head. Not even a breeze. Makes me wish I was at home to take it all in. Will looked at me and rolled his eyes. During my tour, I had only seen the unit for a brief moment, but now, I'd be spending my first shift here. The door cycled and we walked into the officer station. The inmates refer to H-Pod as the fishbowl because of the way the building is laid out. When you first walk in, there's the officer station, a desk with a bunch of drawers filled with miscellaneous papers and hygiene supplies, a computer and phone. To the right, 1 house, left, 2 house, and in front of the desk, 3 house. There are 3 housing units with windows spanning the wall so the officer can see into the units from the officer station. Each unit is identical. A bathroom with shower stalls and toilets next to 2 rows of bunk beds and spanning the width of the unit is the day room, consisting of a few bolted down tables and chairs. On one wall of each unit is a phone and a video station. Each can hold roughly 25 inmates. The entrance door then began to cycle.
So we gotta do a head count with the swing shift officer and get passed down,
Will said as we walked through the door. Just as he said this, the radio chimed off, "Attention in the facility. Formal head count is now in progress." Will and I proceeded into the officer station and placed our things on the desk.
Holy shit. Who the fuck let you in here?
The shout came from the man sitting at the desk.
Oh, sorry. I'm Smid. You must be Jay, right?
Yeah, that's me. Smith was an older, heavyweight man with a mustache. He was well kept, but looks like he was a few years past retirement.
Didn't know they made uniforms that big, Schmidt. Did the department have to special order it?
Smith stood up and laughed.
Fuck you, Will. Let's count so I can get the fuck out of here.
Smith turned to me and asked,
You do know how to count, right?
Before I could answer, Will popped in.
Of course he does. Just take your boots off and use your fingers and toes if you get confused.
The two laughed for a moment before we all walked to the first unit and counted. Once we finished counting the units, Smith sat back down at the computer. Will sat on the desk next to Smith and I took off to the side.
Anything to pass down?
No. Ain't shit happened out here today. Although, 2 house been pretty needy. There might be a few guys needing phone pins, but other than that, everyone is pretty much squared away. Just glad it's Friday. Now I start the weekend.
Any plans?
Aside from cleaning your mom's plumbing, no. Just plan on taking it easy and lounging around.
I just saw her and she didn't mention having a plumbing.
Took you a minute there, didn't it? Rook, sometimes you have to give Will a minute to process things. He's special. His mom told me that.
Smith laughed, slapping Will on the leg. I chuckled to myself. So how do you know when it's time to leave? I asked. Just as the words left my mouth, the radio keyed up. Attention in the facility. A formal head count is now clear. Almost immediately after the transmission, a different voice came over the radio. The swing shift. Complete your pass down. Clean up your area. Finish any reports. And you are clear to go. I could feel Will and Smith looking down at me. Never mind. I guess that answers my question.
Well, Will, looks like you finally found a trainee that's up to your speed. Jay, don't take it as if I'm picking on you. This is how we joke around here. It all comes from a good place. If anyone genuinely offends you, let them know. And if anyone gives you shit, you let it fly right back at them. Stay safe tonight, guys. I'll see you later.
Have a good weekend, you fat bastard.
Later, I said. Smith then left.
Well, it's just you and me, Rook. Grab your binder and find your login info for the computer. Let's make sure it works before General Wells leaves.
I grabbed my binder and found my login info. Luckily, it worked. I then began to flip through the pages of the binder while the computer loaded up. Inside, I found the HR manual, facility policies and procedures, inmate handbook, and a weirdly discolored copy picture of uniform standards. I got to the back and found a single page titled, 5 Rules Every Officer Must Follow to Survive the Graveyard. It was photocopied and looked like the original was at least 15 to 25 years old. I took it out of the binder and held it up to Will. Is this some kind of prank or something? Like some way of adding a little humor to the dry material? Will looked down and saw what I was holding. His face dropped.
Oh, make no mistake. That is no joke. I'll take care of the first check while you get settled, but I recommend you read those rules first.
He stood and walked towards one house. While Will did the check, I read the rules. Rule 1. Don't whistle at night. Rule 2. Take a partner when doing a perimeter check when possible. If you must do it solo, just look at the fence and walk as quickly as possible. Do not talk to the woman in the tree line. Rule 3. If an inmate says they saw a shadow with nobody attached to it, acknowledge them, then move on like nothing was said. If you see a shadow and nobody attached to it, just turn and walk away. Rule 4. If you hear your name but nobody is around, act like someone was there and shrug it off like you just missed them walking away. If you hear someone talking to you after shrugging it off, do not follow the voice, especially if you are outside. Rule 5. If you see them and show fear, you're already a goner. Just go with them and don't try to bring anyone else with you. This has to be a fucking joke. There's no way it's not, I said. I set the paper down and leaned back in the chair.
It's not a joke, and it is real. We'll talk about it more when I'm done with the check. Finish logging onto the computer.
Will then opened the door of 2 house and walked inside. I finished setting up my profile and waited for Will. I looked over towards 1 house and looked into the window. I could see the light from the setting sun on the wall. Most of the inmates were already in bed. I heard the sound of someone tapping on the window behind me. "What's up?" I yelled. I turned around to see nobody there. I expected to see someone standing at the entrance door waiting for it to cycle so they could come in. I expected something. I brushed it off as a mixture of the wind and my senses being heightened after reading the rules. After a couple minutes, Will returned having completed the check.
Hey, you got logged in. Awesome. There's been too many times where rookies' login just didn't work. Usually it's from the sergeant fat fingering the keys and adding an extra character. Just pull up the logs and find the tab titled Cell Check. From there, just type HPod Cell Check Complete and hit save.
I did as he said, and we sat in silence for a moment. So are you going to explain how the rules aren't actually bullshit? Will sighed and sat back on a chair he found in the storage closet.
Do you really not believe in the paranormal?
No, I really don't. Every time I've heard anyone tell me a story of their experience, it's always been explainable in one way or another.
Have you experienced anything you couldn't readily explain?
Honestly, no, I haven't. I've never seen a shadow moving on its own, or heard a disembodied voice, or heard something only to see nothing there. It's not like I'm closed off to the idea of it. I just haven't experienced anything that has definitely proven it to me, and I'm not about to go searching for it either. Will eyed me curiously. I could tell he was trying to read me, and I don't blame him. I was doing the same to him when he talked.
So you didn't hear the woman tapping on the entrance door window?
You mean the wind? It must have blown something at the door or something.
You know damn well there's no wind. Wasn't it you who pointed out how there wasn't even a breeze earlier?
Yeah, I said that, but it's been a while since we were out there, I said. I then turned to face the door and looked at the treetops in the distance. After a minute of staring at the trees and not seeing them move even in the slightest, I turned back to Will. It could have been a random breeze that popped up and blew something.
Yeah, sure,
Will said, a tinge of annoyance in his voice. He turned in his chair to face me and leaned forward, looking me in the eyes.
Listen, I've been working here for about 3 years now. For the last year, I've been a trainer. In that time, I've had a hand in training about 10 rookies. Each one of them started on day shift and were sent to me after a month or two. You are the first I've gotten fresh. I will say this one time. If you listen to me and follow what I teach you to the letter, you will survive.
I could see a mixture of passion and pleading desperation in Will's eyes when he said that to me. How many of the rookies you've trained are still here? Will sat back in his chair and sighed. After a moment of silence, Will said,
About 5.
5? How the fuck did half of the rookies you trained quit?
I never said they quit.
Then what happened to them? Will looked at the computer before saying,
They didn't follow the rules.
Will's voice was solemn, and I could tell he wasn't telling me everything.
Listen, you aren't ready for those stories. It's your first night. We'll get into that later. For now, focus on learning the job, and when you're ready, I'll tell you.
You can't just drop this on me and then tell me I'm not ready and move on. How am I supposed to not make the same mistakes as those 5 if I don't know what they did? Will scowled at me. His tone changed from helpful to serious.
All you need to know right now is that they didn't follow the rules. Drop it. I'm serious. Learn the rules and follow them.
He barked before turning and walking into the bathroom. Yes, sir, I said as he walked away. I was curious about what happened, but knew better than to press it on my first day. As I sat at the desk, I could hear the sounds of snoring and toilets flushing in the units. I opened the binder and put the sheet with the 5 rules back in its place. I skimmed through the employee manual when I heard the bathroom door open.
Hey, Rook, it's time for a check. Let's go. Just like with head count, follow behind me.
We then walked through the first unit. Once inside, I heard the door close behind me and I quickly caught up with Will, who was a few feet in front. We walked down the aisles, and as we were going into the bathroom, I heard what sounded like the unit door cycling. I looked at Will, who shrugged and kept walking. When we went to exit the unit, the door was secured. We exited and finished the rest of the cell check. As the night went on, that's how it went. We'd do a cell check and sit back down and talk about the job. Will would explain how to do certain things and what he has found works for him and what he sees work for others. Sometime around 0500, Will sat back in his chair and looked at the ceiling.
I think we've gone over enough work-related BS for the night. Why'd you take this job?
Honestly, I needed the money. Will laughed.
At least you're honest. Most guys spout off some bullshit about helping the community or wanting to make a difference. Some of them really did mean it, but the majority of us just needed a job or needed to make some money.
I was kinda taken aback. Here I thought I took this job for selfish reasons and assumed everyone here wanted to be a part of the change. It was a little bit of a confidence booster knowing this. I think Will could see this on my face.
In the end, it doesn't matter what brought you here. At the end of the day, you showed up. In my book, there's no selfish or noble reason to work in this field. They're showing up and doing the job. And they're showing up and then bailing.
That definitely helps my psyche a little, not gonna lie. When I started working security, everyone had the same precedent for taking the job. The money wasn't good by any stretch of the imagination, but it was there.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Security is shit work and even shittier pay.
He looked back up towards the ceiling and asked,
So, what did your friends and family say about it?
I sighed and looked down at the desk. Well, my friends said I was crazy. My mother-in-law, however, said that I would make a terrible officer.
And your wife?
She didn't say much, but I could tell she's worried.
She'll be fine. Screw your mother-in-law for saying that, though.
Will said. We both laughed before doing another check. When we got back to the desk, I asked Will, So, what about you?
Well, I took the job because I needed one.
Why'd you stay? Will told me he stayed because he fell in love with it. He loves the people he works with, and the pay isn't bad either. He said all this while nudging me with his elbow. After an hour, Will and I were sitting at the desk. While I was reading over the set of the 5 rules, I heard a loud yell saying, "Help me," followed by incoherent screaming coming from outside. It sounded like a female voice. What the fuck was that?
You heard that too? Hang on.
Will reached for the phone and called control.
Hey, are you guys having fun without us? We just heard someone screaming, "Help me," from outside. I thought it was someone fucking around and finding out. You sure you didn't hear it?
His face went pale.
Yes, I know the rules. Just let me know if anything comes of it.
Will then turned towards me.
They don't know what the fuck that was.
From right at the H-pod entrance door, we could hear tapping. A. A female voice was chanting my name at the door. Help me. Help me, Jay. I looked at Will, who was frozen, staring at the computer screen.
Remember the rules. Act like it's not happening and just stare straight ahead.
Fucking help me, Jay! The voice screamed. The door began to shake violently and the taps turned to booming thuds. Jay, I know you can hear me. I can see you shaking. The thuds began to grow faster and began to take on this wet sound, almost like whatever was hitting the door was bleeding. You fucking coward, Jay. They will eat your eyes and fuck the whole stuff behind. When he is done with you, you'll wish you went to hell. One more loud, shrill scream came from the door before it was silent again. What was that? I said shakily. My whole body was trembling. Please tell me this is some kind of sick hazing tradition. Will shushed me and whispered,
Shh, shut the fuck up.
After what felt like an eternity but was only about 5 minutes, Will looked at me. His eyes were misty and it sounded like I could almost hear him sniffle.
Have you ever been here before?
No, outside of my interview and orientation, this is my first time here. I'm not even from this area. Can you explain what the fuck that was about?
That was something I have not experienced in a few months. I've experienced her several times over the years, and no matter how it goes, you never get used to it. We've taken to calling her Banshee. Now, if that's what she is, I don't know. Nor do I care to find out.
How did she know my name? I asked. We both were looking dead ahead still.
Nobody knows how any of them know anything about us, but they do.
So, what do we do from here? We sat in silence for a moment before Will shook his head and said,
I'll report it to Corporal D and let you know what he says.
Will stood up and looked at the time.
Let's do a check real quick, and then I'll see if Corporal D will come out here for a minute.
I stood up and panned my eyes from 3 house to the entrance and exit doors. That's when I saw it. Will?
What's up?
Look, I said, pointing at the entrance door window.
Well, that's new.
We both stared at the door and saw written in blood on the window the words, Jay, help me.
let's do this check real quick. The quicker we finish, the quicker I can talk to D.
There were only a couple of inmates up when we did our check in one house. Hey, CO, can you tell that bitch outside to shut the fuck up? We trying to sleep in here and she woke a few of us up, one inmate said.
Yeah, the guys inside are dealing with it. Sorry, man. Caught us off guard too. You guys hear anything before the screaming?
An inmate that was lying on a bunk along the wall facing outside sat up and looked at us. Yeah, I heard scratching on the wall for about 20 minutes or so before the yelling happened. Anything else? I asked. Actually, yeah. It looked like there was someone looking in the window before we heard the scratching sounds, the first inmate said. Will pointed at the window on the wall.
That window?
Yeah, the inmate replied.
That window is at least 9 feet off the ground.
The room went silent. Nobody said anything else after that. Will and I continued our check. None of the other units reported hearing anything. We returned to the desk and Will called Corporal D.
Hey, Corporal, can you come out here for a minute? Got something you need to see.
Right as he hung up the phone, we both looked at the door again. Holy shit, I said. The writing was gone. We both approached the door and looked at the glass of the window. No sign of it even being cleaned off, I pointed out.
Yeah, no sign of rain either. What the fuck, man?
Will said. I could tell he was frustrated. He quickly returned to the desk and called Corporal D again.
Hey, instead of coming out here right away, I need you to review the cameras. Yeah, the entrance door, between 0500 and 0520. Tell me if anyone approached it or cleaned the window.
Hey, Will, I said. I gave the window a further inspection. What I initially saw gave me the chills. The same layer of dust was on the window with no signs of anybody touching it at all, let alone signs of someone writing on it and then cleaning it off.
What's up, Jay?
I turned to look at Will. When I made eye contact with him, his eyes went wide. Doesn't look like. I froze when I saw his expression. What? Will didn't say a word, but pointed back at the window. When I turned back around, I saw it.
What the actual fuck?
There wasn't anyone on the other side of the door, but something was writing on the window. J was the first word finished. It took a minute, but we both watched as the words were written. J will die. When I looked closer, it was unmistakable. It was written in blood. Just then the phone rang. Will picked it up.
H-Pod, Officer Will.
I walked back to the desk. Though I couldn't make out what the voice on the other end was saying, it sounded panicked. Will's face went pale.
Understood. I'll let him know.
He hung up the phone and looked back at the window.
We haven't experienced this before. Unexplained knocks, shadows moving, disembodied voices, sure. But this? I haven't seen writing inside the fence before.
What do you mean by inside the fence?
Most of those rules are for when you're outside on perimeter check. I've seen my fair share of weird and unexplainable shit here, but nothing like this.
Will said, not taking his eyes off of the window. He composed himself and looked back at me.
So a bit of bad news.
I can promise you, nothing is worse than seeing your name written in blood 2 different times, I joked.
Well, we're gonna have to stay behind for a debrief with Corporal D.
Just then, I saw a flash of light come from outside the door. Once my eyes readjusted, I could see Corporal D standing there with a camera.
Holy shit. I've heard stories from back in the day when this would happen, but they always said the evidence disappeared before they could collect evidence.
Corporal D said while he was walking through the door. He pulled out a collection kit and took a sample of the blood.
Hopefully this comes back with something. Maybe then we can get some answers.
What do you mean answers? I asked.
Need to know basis, Rook. And trust me when I say, you probably don't want to know.
Will's right, kid. If you need to know, you'll get an update.
Corporal D walked up to the desk and saw I had the rules sitting on top of my binder.
Oh, good. You're learning the rules.
He looked at me with a grin.
So, you still not believe in ghosts?
I can confidently say I am not sure at all anymore, I said smugly.
Listen here, smartass. Let's see if that opinion changes.
He looked at Will now.
I'm gonna steal your rookie for a little bit.
Will looked at Corporal D, then at me and said,
Sounds like a plan, sir.
I then followed Corporal D up to control. What's going on, sir? I asked. I grimaced as the words left my mouth, realizing I should have just kept my mouth shut.
You'll see,
he replied. When we got to control, I could see the camera viewing HPOT was up on one of the screens and it was paused at 04:55.
Have a seat.
I sat down and watched the screen as Corporal D hit play. I watched as Will and I could be seen at the desk and all the inmates in the units were sleeping save for one or two. After a minute of nothing, I saw it. There was a dark shadow-like mist that formed just outside the wall to one house. It morphed into a humanoid form and appeared to climb the wall before seemingly peering into the window of one house. It then disappeared before reappearing outside the entrance door. What the fuck? I said. Just then, I could hear the screaming and yelling. The shadow appeared to slightly lose shape with each scream. The camera switched to the interior view. I could hear the tapping on the glass. It switched back to the view with the shadow. Then it happened. The door bowed with each bang. I watched as red blotches appeared on the glass of the window. Then, silence. I looked closely in disbelief. No fucking way. The shadow reached an arm up to the window and began to write. But from the camera, it was different. I could have sworn it wrote, "Jay, help me," but when I looked at the footage, it had changed. It said, "You could have stopped this, Will." The shadow disappeared right after the writing stopped. That's weird, I said, confused.
What do you mean?
When we first saw it, the writing said, "Jay, help me." Not that. Corporal D looked shocked. He quickly picked up the phone and called Will.
Hey, Will, what did the writing on the window say? The first time, not the one I got a picture of.
Corporal D looked back at me. I was still watching the footage. Will and I got up and did our check and the writing just vanished. I looked back to the camera that viewed the desk. It was then that Corporal D's words rang in my head.
Oh, good. You're learning the rules.
I remember putting that paper back into the binder. Actually, I know that I did. I watched as the shadow appeared at the desk. Corporal. He snapped his attention to me. You may want to see this. He hung up the phone and we both watched as the shadow opened my binder and took out the paper with the rules on it and placed it on the desk.
Wow,
Corporal D said. We continued to watch as the shadow disappeared again. Corporal D switched the camera back to the view of the door. The shadow didn't reappear this time, but the words "Jay will die" spelled themselves out on the window.
And now we are all caught up.
What did Will say was written the first time? I asked.
Same shit you said. So let me ask you again.
I cut him off. Yeah, I'd say it's safe to say I believe now. Corporal D laughed and patted me on the shoulder.
Didn't think something would happen this soon. Sorry you had to go through this on your first night. Just get back to your post. Tell Will there's no need for a debrief after shift.
Thank you, sir. I will deliver the message, I said, standing up. As I walked out of the room, Corporal D told me,
Oh, and Jay, don't quit on us now.
Sir, I said with a smile, I, quite literally, can't afford to. So I guess I better get used to this kind of shit. When I got back to H-Pod, Will was sitting at the desk.
How'd it go?
You definitely need to see that footage.
Oh, I plan on it. Hey, when the daywalkers get here, we'll just leave this out of our pass down. They don't understand, and I don't feel like explaining my sanity.
I just nodded my head in agreement. The sun began to rise and the day shift officer arrived and we did head count. Once we finished telling him how nothing happened, we left. As we walked out of the facility, I couldn't shake this feeling that I was being followed. When I got into my car and looked out the windshield, I thought I saw a woman standing in the tree line, staring right at me. Remembering Rule 2, I turned my car on and drove home. About 3 months after my first shift, I was all trained up. I was posted as a roamer for my first solo shift. I say solo because I wasn't actually on my own, technically. When you're posted as a roamer, you have a partner. When I was in training, I was always with Will, so technically I was his partner. This is because, as the rules state, you have to bring a partner with you whenever you do a perimeter check or go outside the fence line. My partner that night was Val. Outside of our brief interaction on my first night, I hadn't worked with Val all that much. She was nice and very helpful. We all joked that Val was the mom of the shift. When I got hurt, only minor scratches, after a fight with a drunk guy that was being booked in, she was the first one to yell at me for not going to see the nurse afterwards. I'm sure that if it wouldn't have gotten her in trouble, she would have dragged me by my ear to the medical office.
So Jay, how are you liking the job so far?
We were walking in from briefing together after getting our special assignment for the night. Good. Aside from all the annoying questions the inmates ask, I think I'm starting to get it. I got a question for you.
What's up?
So, Corporal D said that both Days and Swings reported outside calls coming in reporting a woman spotted in the woods just outside the perimeter. Is this something that happens often? We stopped walking and Val looked at me for a moment.
Kinda. We get calls about hikers or hunters or hell. Sometimes groups of teenagers hanging out in the forest all the time. This isn't something too out of the ordinary.
She sounded like she was choosing her words very carefully. I looked at Val and could see something was bothering her. Corporal D had the two of us stay after everyone else. Our special assignment was that we had to do a perimeter check once an hour. Normally, there's only 2 to 3 perimeter checks done per shift. Once at the start of the shift, and once towards the end of the shift. And if nothing is going on, once in the middle. That night, we'd be doing 5 times as much as normal. The assignment didn't end with that, though. We technically have 4 perimeters. There's the interior perimeter, which is everything inside the interior fence, the fence that lines the yard. Then there's the space in between the outer perimeter fence and the yard fence. We call this area no man's land, since it's not used for anything other than emergency evacuation meeting points and access to maintenance closets. After that, you have the exterior perimeter. This refers to everything outside the fence that encompasses the entire facility. Normally, when we do a perimeter check, we start with an interior perimeter check. This is done by checking the recreation yard and interior fence, making sure the fence has no signs of damage or tampering, and checking the entire yard for contraband and/or hazards. When we do an exterior perimeter check, we ensure the exterior fence is intact and check for any possible contraband stashed outside. Usually, these are the only checks done, but we were tasked with checking the 4th perimeter once every 2 hours as well. This is a fence that is about 100 feet into the tree line. It serves as a barrier separating the outer perimeter of the facility from the residential area and about 3/4 of a mile behind the tree line. Unlike the interior and exterior fence, this one doesn't encompass the property. Instead, it's in an L shape and is only about 1,000 feet long in total. It's only accessible on foot through roughly carved trails that line the fence. During daylight hours, it's a beautiful hike through the forest. When the sun is out, the thick tree canopy provides a pleasant balance between shade and visibility. Don't get me wrong, the forest surrounding the jail has an eerie feeling to it. Regardless of the time, you always feel like you're being watched or followed. At night, it's straight out of a horror movie. Without a bright flashlight, it's impossible to navigate since the tree canopy blocks any ambient moonlight. During my training, Will only showed me this fence line one time, and that was when the sun was out. "Hey, you okay?" I asked.
Yeah, why?
Val was normally very chipper and talkative, but after hearing what our assignment was, she was acting off. Just seems like this assignment is bothering you. Normally you'd be talking my ear off about the weekend, but you haven't said much since briefing.
I'm fine.
Val said. Her tone was uncharacteristically short. The door into the facility slid open with a metallic clang, like it always does. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see Val flinch with the clang. I'm gonna set my shit down and check out my gear from control. I'll meet you in the yard at 21:30 and we can start the first check.
Sounds good.
I went to the control room and checked out my radio, the keys to the personnel gates and the fences, and a flashlight. Corporal D handed me a different flashlight than normal. Usually, we get issued a generic run-of-the-mill flashlight. Nothing special to it, just bright enough to see in the dark areas of a unit without waking the inmates. This one was a big fuck you flashlight. The bulb was at least 6 inches around and it was about a foot long. On the side of it read, 100,000 lumens LED in white lettering. Whoa, this thing is fucking huge.
Yeah, we ordered that a couple months ago for perimeter checks, and it arrived earlier today. I turned it on in the admin office, and it lit up the room like it was daylight. I think it should be sufficient for the night. Just don't lose it.
Well, as long as it lights the way, it'll work. I'll let you know how it works when I get back from this check. Now, if you got nothing going on later, maybe you'll join us for a check and see it in action.
We'll see.
I turned and walked out of the room. After I secured the control door behind me, I turned to see Will standing in the hallway. Hey, Will, what's up? Will opened the door to the attorney visit room, a small room with no cameras for attorney-client privilege. Supervisors would pull you into this room to have unpleasant conversations. Officers, however, would use this room to talk without people eavesdropping. So, when Will motioned for me to step in the room with him, I knew something was wrong.
Jay, we need to talk.
He said, making sure the door was closed.
You remember how on your first night you asked me about the 5 rookies I lost?
Yeah, I remember you telling me that I wasn't ready. Why?
Val told me about your guys' assignment tonight and what Corporal D reported sparked it. Before you start these checks, you need to know something.
What are you trying to say?
You're ready, Jay.
Will said. My demeanor changed from nervous to excited, and I smiled ear to ear.
Don't let it go to your head. This isn't a good thing, but it is something you need to know.
My smile vanished. Oh shit, is it that bad? I asked.
Let me start from the beginning, and you can make the determination after that.
We both sat down at the table across from each other.
About 2.5 years ago, I was in your shoes. I was let loose on my own, and it was going great. That was until another rookie, Ryan, who I was hired on with, and I was tasked with checking in on a report of some kids running around in the trees on the perimeter. It was dusk and the air was still. We radioed in that we were beginning our check. It took us about 10 minutes to reach the closest corner of the fence beyond the tree line because we were joking around and horseplaying. By the time we got to the fence, it was dark, like nighttime level dark. When I looked behind us on the trail we came in on, I could see the sunlight still. It was like being 2 hours ahead of everyone else. We pulled out our flashlights and pushed on. After about a minute of walking, Ryan stopped. I could see he had squatted down and was looking at the ground in front of him.
Will paused for a minute and looked up at me. I could see on his face that he was searching for the words.
What's rule number 1, Jay?
Don't whistle at night.
When I saw what he was looking at, I froze. There were dozens of child-sized footprints in the dirt. Ryan stood up and we both heard a whistle. It sounded like when someone tries to mock a bird call. We looked at each other. That sounded close, Ryan said. I shined my flashlight around and we looked for the source of the whistle. After not seeing anything, we agreed to push forward. We heard it again. This time, we could tell it was coming from the left. Ryan shined his light to the left and I kept looking straight ahead. Again, we couldn't find it and kept moving. There was another whistle, this time from the right. Same as before. We didn't see shit. You know what I didn't realize until after everything?
What?
Aside from the whistling, there were no other sounds. Not even the sounds of our footsteps.
How is that possible?
no clue, but out there, you're in their world, and the rules of our world don't seem to apply. After that last whistle, Ryan turned to me and said, "I'm gonna try whistling back." I told him that it was a stupid idea and pleaded with him not to, but he did it anyway.
What happened?
It was silent for a second after. Then, all hell broke loose. We heard running close by, but in all directions. I could tell we were being circled. The steps were so quick. It sounded like a low hum. Ryan turned to face me and began back up. Rule number 5, Will. I'm not taking you down with me. I could hear the running getting farther away from me as he backed up.
What did you do?
I was frozen in place. I tried moving, but it was like something was holding me in place. That's when I heard it.
Will sighed, then stood up.
A voice inside my head. All it said was, "He's ours now." Then silence. When I was finally able to move, I moved my light around trying to find Ryan. There were no footprints on the ground in front of me where Ryan was. I couldn't bring myself to push forward, so I backtracked. While I was walking back to where we entered, I noticed something.
Will leaned back against the wall.
There was only one set of footprints on the trail. I couldn't explain it, not then and not now. When I came out of the trail, it was pitch black outside. I saw 2 people walking on the perimeter with flashlights shining at me. "Will, that you?" one of them asked. When they got closer, I saw it was Corporal D. He was still an officer back then. They walked me back inside, and that's when I found out it was midnight. When Ryan and I walked out there, it was 2000 hours. We had been gone for 4 hours, but it only felt like 30 minutes. They asked about Ryan, but all I could say was, they took him.
Will stepped up to the table and leaned in close to me.
Remember the rules and follow them, Jay. 3 of the 5 rookies I was talking about all fell to the same fate. Learn from them. From me.
I won't, Will, I promise, I said. He nodded at me and we walked out of the room. When I looked at my watch, I saw it was 21:30. Shit, I gotta go meet up with Val in the yard. It's time for the first check. I split away from Will and began to walk out towards the yard.
Stay safe. Let me know how it goes if you come back,
Will said with a smirk. When I got through the door leading out to the yard, Val was already checking the fence.
Look who decided to show up.
I radioed to control that we were beginning the interior check and caught up with Val. Sorry, I was talking to Will. We finished the interior check and I keyed into the personnel gate.
So, he told you about Ryan?
I swung the gate open and we walked into no man's land. I called in the end of the first check and the start of the second. Yeah, I whispered.
You okay?
She asked. I locked the gate back up and we began to walk along the interior fence.
I know it's a lot to take in, but don't let it get to your head. I need you on your shit tonight.
I'm good, I promise, I said. I started to get this feeling of being watched the closer we got to the tree line. I turned on the flashlight and shined it at the exterior fence. Holy shit, Corporal D wasn't kidding. This thing is like having sunlight in your hand.
No kidding. It's almost too bright.
Val was right. When I pointed the light at the chain link fence, it reflected off the metal almost to the point of not being able to see past the fence. We walked in silence for a couple minutes before I was frozen in my tracks. I heard what almost sounded like whispering coming from just beyond the fence. Did you say something?
No. Why?
Val stopped a few steps ahead of me before turning around. Could have sworn I heard someone talking. Let's keep going.
Yeah, the quicker we get back inside, the better. I'll keep an ear out.
While we were walking, I could hear the wind blowing through the trees and crickets chirping in the bushes. Once we finished the second check and walked through the last gate and out the exterior fence, all the sounds vanished. It was like walking through a portal. I radioed control that we were starting the final 2 checks and we started walking. After about 2 minutes of silence, I looked at Val. You hear that?
No, what are you...
She stopped herself mid-sentence.
What the fuck?
Yeah, I know. When we stopped walking, I noticed that we had finished the exterior check. I know this is probably the last thing you want to hear, but all we have left is the back fence. I looked at my watch to make note of the time. It was 21:45. I turned my flashlight to the tree line, and about 15 feet in front of us was the trailhead. Fuck it, I sighed, before radioing to control that we were entering the trail.
Let's get this over with.
We entered the trailhead, and I kept the light pointing straight ahead. Even with how bright the lights seemed outside the trail, we could only see about 10 feet in front of us. It was like there was a black sheet being held up at the end of the beam. As we walked along the trail, my eyes kept panning to the ground looking out for little footprints Will told me about. But there was nothing there. "What's that?" I said, as I saw an orange landscaping flag on the ground. Written on the flag was confirmation code 36021. I had Val write down the code. "Let's leave this here. Something tells me taking anything from here is a bad idea."
No argument here. Wonder why it's here though. I've been through here a bunch of times and have never seen it before.
"Looks fairly new. I'll ask Dee about it when we get back." We continued walking until we popped out of the trees at the other end of the trail about 20 minutes later. Well, that was uneventful.
Don't get cocky. We still have more of those checks ahead of us. What time is it?
I looked at my watch. Strange. My watch says 21:45.
How is that possible? We've been walking for at least half an hour.
I radioed control that we were done with the final check and that we were heading back in.
Jay, Val, switch to channel 3 on your radios.
Corporal D's voice came through. I looked at Val, shrugged, and we both turned our radios to channel 3. Jay, radio check.
Val, radio check.
Good copy on both. You guys actually need to do your checks.
Corporal, we did. We've been walking for like half an hour.
There's no way. Jay just radioed saying you just got to the trailhead. I know you might not want to be out there, but if you aren't lying, do you have anything to report?
Yes, sir. I found an orange landscaping flag.
An orange landscaping flag. Anything special about it? We have contractors that leave them behind all the time.
Written on it was confirmation code 36021. There was a long pause before the radio keyed up again.
Go back to channel 1 and meet me in control.
We switched out radios and checked in with control before heading back into the facility. When we got to control, Corporal D was sitting at his desk.
I need to know exactly what happened on that trail.
We entered the trailhead and just kept walking. About halfway through, I saw the flag and had Val write down the number. We walked for another 10 to 15 minutes before we exited the other end of the trail.
Then there was nothing else to report. No strange sounds or anything out of place.
No, we didn't see anything, and it was dead silent. That was the only weird thing. There was no ambient noises at all. Only thing I heard was our footsteps.
And you, Jay?
Same. Aside from the flag, I didn't see or hear anything.
Okay. Well, you got another check coming up here soon. Luckily for you, it's only the exterior check. Since the report was about the forest, you don't need to worry about either of the interior checks the rest of the night.
Sounds good.
Sir, why was that flag there?
I put that there about a month ago. Got word that one of the day shift guys is being accused of falsifying his early morning checks. If an officer takes too long for the check or finishes it too quickly, the code lets the supervisor know if the check was legit or not.
Does this happen often?
It started to become a frequent thing about 3 months ago.
Corporal D turned around. Taking the hint that the conversation was over, I turned around and started to leave control.
Let me know if you need anything else.
When I walked into the hallway outside of control, I saw Val talking to Will.
Jay, you good?
Will asked. A little weirded out, but overall I'm good.
Jay, are you sure? You seemed shook up when you were talking to Dee.
Val was back to her normal self and was now in mom mode. Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out what's with all the secrecy. Will put his hand on my shoulder.
Some things are better unknown. If it was important for you to know, they'd tell you.
Do you know?
Some of it, but they compartmentalize a lot of it. Don't think about it too much. You got a long night ahead of you.
Yeah, guess you're right, I said. I looked at the time and it was already time for the next check. Val, it's time. Val gave me a nod and turned back towards Will.
See you on the other side.
Stay safe.
I gave Will a fist bump. We'll try. With that, Val and I walked outside. You want to call it in?
Yeah, I got it.
Val said. She pulled out her radio and notified Control that the check was starting.
Check your watch. Make sure it's working.
We both checked our watches. I got 22:15. You?
Same. Well, let's get to it.
We started walking. As I turned on the flashlight, I checked the battery indicator. Damn, this thing has one hell of a battery. It's got this little screen that shows how long the battery will last, and it changes based on the brightness selected. I held the flashlight up to show Val. It says at full brightness it should last us about 4 hours.
Well, that's good.
We took the first corner and walked along the fence. As I was panning the flashlight from the fence to the trees, I thought I saw movement about 250 feet behind some bushes. Hang on, did you see that? Val stopped next to me and looked where I was shining the light.
Must have been a deer.
Well, we're heading that way. I didn't get a good look at whatever it was, I said. When we got to where the bushes were, I saw movement behind. I stopped and looked around. I'm gonna check behind the bush and see if I see anything.
Don't go too far, Jay.
I got behind the bush and saw the grass behind it had been pushed down as if someone had just walked through here. Looks like somebody recently walked through here, I said. I knelt down and could see a set of footprints. Well, there was someone here. Looks like they were barefoot, too. Val winced as I said it.
How big are the prints?
I knew what she was getting at. Looks to be adult-sized, small but too big to be a child. Just then I heard a scream. What was that?
Get out of there. I can't see anything without the light.
I was making my way back towards Val when we heard another scream. Something wasn't right about it. It didn't sound human. I've seen videos of cougar calls sounding like a woman screaming, but this didn't sound like that either. Val, did something seem off about those screams? When I looked at Val, she was crying.
Let's get the fuck out of here, Jay.
Yeah, okay, let's go, I said and patted Val on her back. We finished up our check. There were more screams while we walked, but with each one we walked faster. By the end of the check, we were almost in a dead sprint.
Sorry,
Val whispered to me. Don't be. I radioed to Control that we had finished the check and were coming back inside. Are you okay? I asked. When we came in, we walked through the officer's wing. This was the side of the facility that had some admin offices. The break room, workout area. Nothing fancy. Just some dumbbells and one of those workout machines you would normally see in a hotel gym. Briefing room, conference room, and 2 locker rooms. 1 male, 1 female.
I'll be fine. I just need a minute.
Val walked into the woman's locker room and I walked back into the facility. Right as the door closed behind me, Will was already walking towards me.
Where's Val?
In the locker room crying. I was interrupted by Officer Smith, an immature asshole who needs no further description.
What? You sure your dick out there? I'd cry too.
Smith, shut the fuck up.
Jeez, was just fucking around,
Smith said. Thankfully, he walked off. Maybe it was Will's face turning red, a sign that he is royally pissed. Or maybe it was my, please let today be the day look. But he was gone. Fuck that asshole. As I was saying, it was a rough check.
Yeah. I could hear the screaming when I stepped outside for some air.
You heard it?
I counted 5. Were there more?
Yeah, about 10 in total. Anything sound weird about them to you?
Uh-huh. Haven't heard anything like it before. Definitely not human. Didn't sound like any animal I've heard either.
It almost sounded like something trying to mimic someone screaming. Will looked at me with wide eyes, like I had found the missing piece of the puzzle. What?
Like when we heard that woman screaming your name a couple months back?
Then it clicked. It was the same scream we heard right before my name. Holy shit, I need to... Just then Val walked up to us.
Need to what?
Go back out, I answered. Whatever made that scream is the same thing that scared the shit out of me on my first night. Val looked at Will.
Can you go with him? I can't go back out there.
Jay, Val, come here.
I heard from behind me. I turned around to see Corporal D standing in the hallway. Val and I looked at each other, then at Will. Will shrugged and walked away.
What happened out there?
Everything was fine until I saw movement behind a bush. When I checked it out, I saw adult-sized footprints. Then we heard screaming, but couldn't find the source.
Yeah, I heard it too. Was I seeing things? Or were you two in almost a dead sprint towards the last stretch of the perimeter?
We were. I told Jay we needed to leave. And we started walking. That was until we heard more screaming. Jay looked around, but each scream seemed to come from a different direction. That's when we started running.
I didn't even think of it until then, but she was right. Each scream after the first came from a different direction.
You guys okay?
We both nodded yes, and Corporal D paused for a moment.
Good. You guys have a few before the next check.
Val looked at her watch and her jaw dropped.
Jay, what time do you have?
22:45, I answered. Then it hit me. We had been gone for over 30 minutes. Corporal, what time do you have? Corporal D looked confused and checked his phone.
22:45, same as you. Why?
I could see on his face that right after the words left his mouth, it clicked for him too.
Fucking hell. How long do you guys think you were gone?
I looked at Val, and she looked like she was going to faint. I don't know, maybe 10 minutes at the longest? Corporal D looked at Val.
You need to sit down. You look like you're gonna pass out.
Val shook her head.
No, I'm fine. Just a little shocked.
Understandable. I don't know why, but time is acting weird out there.
You mind if I take Will with me on this next check? I asked. Val shot me a look that I'm sure she wished would kill me.
I don't care, as long as there's two of you going.
Thank you, sir. I'll let him know. Corporal D turned and walked away.
Sounds good. Be safe.
Once he was gone, I looked at Val. Sorry, I know you wanted to be the one to ask. I panicked after the whole time issue. There's an unspoken rule in my facility. If you or your partner want to switch tasks or post with another officer, the officer that initiated the request is the one who asks. So for me to ask on Val's behalf, especially as a rookie, could be taken as disrespect. I wasn't trying to disrespect you.
It's fine, Jay. I know you didn't mean anything by it.
Val punched me on the shoulder.
Besides, I already called him before I walked back here.
She smirked at me and walked towards intake.
Be careful out there,
she said, looking over her shoulder as she walked away. Just then, Will walked up to me.
You ready?
Yeah, let's go, I said. I notified control, then Will and I walked outside. What time you got? Will pulled out his phone. I looked at him with wide eyes. We weren't allowed to have our personal cell phones with us while on duty.
D approved it.
I wouldn't snitch on Will for something so minor compared to what we were dealing with outside. You know I wouldn't say anything. Now I can't slip you shit for it.
I got 2250.
Will said. I watched as he turned the stopwatch feature on.
Does your watch have a stopwatch?
Yeah, I got 2250 as well. I turned on my stopwatch. You ready?
Ready as I'll ever be.
I checked the battery of the flashlight. All right, battery says it's got about 3.5 hours. Will nodded and we started walking. As we rounded the first corner, Will stopped.
Hey, shine that light over here.
He was pointing to the right at the tree line. I did, but didn't see anything. What's up?
Thought I heard something. Maybe I'm just paranoid.
Maybe. Keep it up and I'll have to throw you in with the rest of the crazies. I gave him a nudge on his shoulder. Let's keep going.
Ha ha ha. Very funny, Jay. Just keep an ear out.
We walked for another 20 feet before I saw something lying on the road up ahead. What is that? Once we got within 10 feet of it, we both froze.
No. There's no way. Ryan!
I grabbed Will by the back of his vest when I saw he was beginning to run towards the figure laying in the road. Will, stop! We don't know if it's actually him.
Fuck!
Will screamed. He was breathing heavily and I could see he was tearing up. Just then the figure started to move.
What the fuck, man?
We began to inch closer and I could see the figure better. There was no mistaking the uniform hanging off the sunken frame of the body lying there. Call it in, I said. Will reached for his radio, but as he was putting it to his face, the figure spoke. Help me, please. As the last word left his mouth, I heard Will drop his radio. Will. When it reached his arm up in a plea, I saw the nameplate on the torn-up vest it wore. It read, Ryan P. There was no mistaking it now. This was Ryan. Fucking how? I whispered. Will picked up his radio and called it in. We both ran towards Ryan. He was in bad shape. His hair was long and had chunks missing. His face was swollen. He had deep cuts that were infected and oozed a viscous white and green liquid all over his cheeks. Though his face was swollen, his eyes were sunken in. He was missing teeth, and what teeth he did have were black and jagged. He looked extremely malnourished. The skin on his arms was sunken in, revealing more bone than muscle. If it wasn't for the jumpsuit he wore, his pants would be falling off. I've seen pictures of him from before he went missing. The Ryan that Will knew was well built. He had neatly cut hair, he styled a high and tight haircut and was clean-shaven. The figure in front of Will and I was not the Ryan everyone knew. Corporal D arrived a couple minutes later and upon seeing Ryan's condition, promptly vomited into a bush.
Holy shit, is that...
Will cut him off.
It's fucking Ryan! Get a fucking medic now!
Corporal D hurriedly pulled out his phone, almost dropping it, and made a call. I couldn't hear what he was saying, partly because I was paying more attention to Will and Ryan, but it didn't sound like he was on the phone with 911. Will, what's going on? I don't think D is getting EMS. Sounds like he's talking to someone about Ryan. This seemed to draw Will's attention away from Ryan.
I don't know.
He was looking at Corporal D and knowing Will was studying his body language.
You see that, right?
I looked up at Corporal D and watched him for a minute. He was pacing back and forth with his phone held up to his ear. Seems normal to me, I said. Then I saw what Will was talking about. Every few steps he would peer over at us, but rather than showing concern, it looked more like he was suspiciously monitoring us. What the fuck is he doing?
Not sure, but something isn't sitting right.
Will said before turning his attention back towards Ryan. After about 10 minutes, an ambulance and a fire engine arrived and rushed Ryan onto a gurney. They hooked him up to an EKG machine as well as an oxygen mask. I was standing with Will next to the gurney when we heard Ryan speak. I'll be okay, he said through labored breaths. Come see me in the hospital. Corporal D handed his phone to the paramedic on the other side of the gurney from us. He put it to his ear, and after a moment, I saw his eyes widen before looking at Corporal D. Bring him to, Ryan said, shakily lifting his hand to point at me. Just then, the paramedics pushed Will and I back before they strapped Ryan down to the gurney with soft restraints, the ones that attached to the rails. Ryan looked at us. I could see the surprise and fear in his eyes.
What are you doing?
Will asked in surprise. Corporal D looked at me, and I could see the worried look on his face. Who was that on the phone? He walked up to me and said,
Jay, not now.
As Ryan was loaded into the ambulance, Will tried to get in, but Corporal D wouldn't let him. After the doors closed, I could see one of the paramedics loading up a syringe. The lights and sirens kicked on and the ambulance left. A couple of the firefighters were picking up some equipment off the ground while they were getting back into the engine. I haven't seen them use a sedative like that for a while, I heard one of them say to the other as they walked back to the rig. The three of us watched as the fire engine drove off. After the lights disappeared in the distance, I heard footsteps coming from the forest behind us. You hear that? I asked. We all turned around and I shined the flashlight towards the trees.
I didn't. What did you hear?
Footsteps.
Mm-hmm.
Will growled. Will and I looked at each other. Outer fence? I asked.
Outer fence.
Let's go.
We started walking, and immediately after stepping off of the perimeter road and onto the grass, silence. I could see Will's mouth moving, but I couldn't hear anything. I motioned to my ear and shook my head to signal to them that I couldn't hear anything. Corporal D motioned to us to keep moving. As we walked closer to the trailhead, I could see the reflection of the fence about 20 feet in front of us. After about 30 seconds of walking, I noticed the reflection never got any closer. Then my ears popped. Ugh, that fucking hurt. I stopped walking. Will stopped shortly after.
Fuck, that stings.
Almost immediately after Will, Corporal D stopped.
Shit!
We all looked at each other.
Where's the fence?
I turned the flashlight back to where we were walking to. I swear the reflection from the fence was just there. Even with the flashlight, I couldn't see more than a few feet in front of me.
That's new.
After painting the flashlight around, I saw a glint up ahead. There it is, let's go. We started walking again. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Will turn around.
You hear that?
I handed the flashlight to Corporal D and turned around, walking backwards with Will. He had already pulled his flashlight and pointed the light straight ahead.
Sounded like ceremonial drumming.
I don't hear anything. I squinted my eyes to try and see where Will was looking, but his light barely pierced through the void-like darkness in front of us, enough to see maybe 10 feet? You okay, Will?
Yeah, I'm fine. So, you gonna tell us what the phone call was about?
Corporal D dropped his head.
I can't.
Will stepped in front of Corporal D and stopped. His face was getting red.
Bullshit! What's with all the fucking secrecy, D?
I'm already in deep shit for letting the EMS show up first.
Corporal D cut himself short. His eyes widened and his face showed that he let something slip. What the fuck do you mean first? I yelled. Corporal D turned towards me. Ever since I started, it feels like I need a top secret security clearance to know anything. Hell, I know even Will is keeping shit from me. I didn't even know about Ryan until today. Corporal D shot Will a surprised look.
You told him about Ryan?
Will looked like he was filled with boiling rage. Through clenched teeth, he growled.
With this perimeter check-in bullshit tonight, he deserved to know.
Corporal D sighed.
Last time I checked, that's not your job to decide.
So you were just gonna send him on a suicide mission?
I could see Will balling his hands into fists. The look in his eyes showed he was ready for a fight. When I looked back at Corporal D, he looked dejected. Corporal, what the fuck are you hiding from us? From me? Why am I not allowed to know anything about what's been happening here? Corporal D broke. Tears flooded his eyes and he dropped to his knees. He set the flashlight on the ground and rubbed his eyes.
I can't take this shit anymore. Jay, it's not what I wanted to do. I knew what Will was going to tell you the second I saw him pull you to the side.
Will unclenched his fists and rubbed the bridge of his nose.
D, what the fuck is going on?
I knelt down and picked up the flashlight.
We received a message last night.
Corporal D said, pulling his phone from his pocket. He opened up the media player and pressed play. When the recording started, a female voice could be heard whispering, "It will return." It was clear, by the cadence the voice spoke with, The voice was saying each word separately and not as one sentence. The voice grew louder. It will return. A male voice could be heard joining the other one. They spoke louder. It will return. It will return. It kept repeating the same thing as the female voice. Jay will die. Both voices grew louder. Jay will die. The male voice started chanting, It will return. As the two voices chanted their respective phrases, a familiar voice spoke. Rule number 5, Will. I'm not taking you down with me. All three voices stopped. There was silence for a minute. Will and I looked at Corporal D, who held up a finger, signaling, Hold on, there's more. Then a distorted voice in the recording broke the silence. Rule number 5. The same voice came through again, this time more distorted than the last. Rule number 5. Again it repeated, but this time the voice was so distorted that all we heard was 5. The voice had lost all familiarity by this point and sounded demonic. After another long pause, a chorus of voices came through, and too many to attempt to count. It will return. Just like with the first voice, each word was emphasized as being on its own, not a part of a sentence. Immediately after, they repeated, It will return, and this time it sounded like the words were being screamed. The chanting continued again, but again the voices grew more distorted. The voices continued to scream, Will return. This time it was clear. They were telling Will to return. The screaming coming from Corporal D's phone abruptly stopped. The familiar voice spoke again. Jay will die. It sounded like they were crying. It was cut off and replaced by the sounds of someone taking a beating. We listened in silence to the sounds of someone getting the shit beat out of them. The recording ended with the sound of ceremonial drumming. I could barely make out the sounds of chanting over the drumming, but could not understand what they said. Corporal D put his phone back into his pocket. How did you get that? Corporal D looked up at me and said,
I honestly don't know. I was looking through old pictures on my phone when I got home yesterday and saw it on the recent files folder when I opened up the gallery. I thought it was some sick joke when I first saw the title. Ryan was the warning.
Warning for what?
No clue.
I knew there were no follow-up questions either of us wanted to ask, not right then at least.
Who was on the phone, D?
I played the recording for the admins this morning. They told me to call them if anything happened tonight. I was ordered specifically to not call for EMS if anyone got hurt outside, or if anyone was found alive. Those motherfuckers knew what was going to fucking happen. They fucking knew we'd find Ryan.
Fucking hell, I sighed. I looked over at Will, the rage filling his face again. I expected him to yell, but he didn't say anything. After a brief silence, Will finally spoke.
That was Ryan's voice.
We all looked at each other, then at the ground. We stood there in silence for what seemed like an eternity, digesting what we had just heard. I broke the silence. How long does it feel like it's been since we started the check? I'm meaning before we found Ryan, too.
Don't know. Maybe 45 minutes? Feels like we've walked at least a mile, too.
My guess would be maybe 2 miles minimum.
I looked down at my watch. According to my stopwatch, it's been, Jay will die. It echoed from all around us. It was the same voices from the recording. I could hear the sounds of footsteps in every direction. I panned the flashlight in a circle. What the fuck? From what I could see, we were in a clearing. Tall pine and Douglas fir trees formed what looked like the start of a ring around the grass. Off to the left of us, I saw something coming out of the ground. What's that? We walked over to what was clearly a sapling.
Looks like a yew sapling.
The footsteps grew louder around us. The voices returned. Jay will die. The sound was deafening. I could feel the ground shake as the drumming started. A female voice whispered, It has returned. This time I didn't hear the voice. The voice was in my head. He returned. The message was in his blood. Then there was silence again. No footsteps or chanting or drumming. What does she mean?
You heard it too, huh?
Same here. There's something else I'm not supposed to tell you.
More secrets?
Shocker. What is it this time?
You remember that sample I took of the writing on the window? It came back positive for blood.
I kind of figured that one.
Well, the DNA test came back too. It was Ryan's blood.
We all looked at the tree in front of us.
What kind of sick fucking game is this? Who pissed off the land spirits?
I have no clue.
What are land spirits? I asked.
In old native folklore, they're child-sized creatures that look like humans. Only difference being, if you're unlucky enough to see one, the longer you look at them, they start to not look human.
Just as Will finished talking, the flashlight died. Fuck, I said. I tried to turn it back on, but it was no use. Flashlight is dead.
How long till sunrise, Jay?
I looked at my watch and saw it was 2 a.m. 7 hours, I think? It's 2 right now.
Luckily, the trees don't block the moonlight in this clearing. Maybe we should start to head back. There's not much light, but it's better than nothing.
The footsteps started again. This time they sounded like they were right on top of us. I felt a sharp pain in my head before everything went black. When I woke up, I was lying next to Will and the sun was up. I sat up to see blood covering us both. What the fuck? Will sat up and looked around.
Where's Dee?
I stood up and rubbed my eyes. All I could see was Will, the sapling, and blood everywhere. Corporal D! I yelled.
Jay, he's gone.
With the sun out, I could see the entirety of the clearing. It was a perfect circle. The tall pine and Douglas fir trees I saw at night lined the grass, creating a perimeter. Whoa. Will and I turned and looked at the sapling. Jay? Will was carved into the trunk. It's missing a word. Will looked at me. Die. Will looked back at the tree and studied it. After a couple seconds, he turned around and looked at the blood on the grass.
Holy fuck!
When I turned around to look at what he saw, I felt a shiver run up my spine. The blood next to where we woke up formed the letter D. I looked all around, searching for more letters, but saw none. What does this mean? Will was staring back at the markings on the sapling.
Jay will die.
I heard him whisper. He mumbled something to himself and then looked at me with horror and excitement filling his eyes.
Jay, I figured it out.
Figured what out?
Ugh, how the fuck did I not see that sooner?
What? Will, what the fuck is it?
D.
Okay, I said. Will looked at me frustrated.
Use your fucking head, Jay.
I'm trying here, Will, but I don't see it.
Die.
Fucking hell, man, that's a little harsh, don't you think? I asked, laughing nervously. I was starting to think Will had finally lost it.
For the love of... Jay, spell die.
D-I-E. I don't get... Then it hit me. Corporal D. When they said Jay will die, they weren't sending me a threat.
Exactly. They were saying D is gonna die. It wasn't a message. It was a list.
That's why it was missing from the tree. You and me are still here. That means... Will and I both hung our heads. Will knelt down and picked something up off the ground.
They led us here.
He said before handing me a piece of metal. It was a fence pole cap with a strip of reflective tape on the top of it. This must be the glint I saw last night.
I'm sorry, D. I hope it was painless.
I thought back to last night, right before everything went black. I felt the back and sides of my head. That's strange. Will, check your head. Will felt his head.
Huh.
For something or someone to have knocked us out, wouldn't there be a lump or at least a painful spot?
Yeah. I feel nothing.
Me either. Looking back, the pain I felt right before going black felt more like a sharp headache. Like a pain in my head instead of on my head.
Same here. Let's get the fuck out of here before it happens again.
I looked at my watch. According to the stopwatch, it says we've been gone 12 hours. Will pulled out his phone.
Mine says 4 hours. Jay, what time do you have?
I looked back down at my watch. Mine says the same. How's the sun out then?
We need to go. We can talk about it later.
I saw Will's eyes following something behind me. Yeah, let's go. I didn't care to see what was coming. We both started running.
I hope this is the way we came in.
We reached the tree line and had to slow down to avoid tripping on the roots. I could hear a blood-curdling scream coming from the clearing behind me. Neither of us turned around to look. We just kept running. After a few minutes of running, we were out of the forest and back to the perimeter road. That shouldn't have been that quick, I said, while we hunched over trying to catch my breath.
No, it shouldn't have been.
I put my hands behind my head and looked up at the sky. When I opened my eyes, I expected to see blinding sunlight, but it was dark. Either I'm blind or it's still night.
You're not blind. We are right back where we found Ryan.
Guess we picked the right direction, I laughed. I looked towards where the emergency vehicles were parked earlier. Something feels off,
Yeah, I feel it too.
Will said. Out of instinct, I radioed to control that we had completed our check and we were heading back in. Will pulled out his phone to turn it off.
Huh.
Do I even want to know? I looked at Will as Control's response came through my radio. Control copy. Perimeter check complete. 2320. As we walked back to the officer entrance, we were stopped by a black SUV. The driver window rolled down and I could see a man in a suit look at me and Will and said, "Get in." We heard the click of the doors unlocking.
Who are you supposed to be?
The man pulled out his wallet and flashed us his ID badge. DHS Supernatural Investigations. Agent Hill. Will and I looked at each other.
Let's not keep him waiting. We already have a fuck ton of questions to answer. Don't feel like getting thrown in cuffs while they ask.
Will opened the door and we got inside. The driver rolled his window back up and locked the doors before driving off. "We've got a long drive and you guys have been through it tonight. Get some sleep." I felt like I was having a panic attack. When I looked at Will, he seemed calm. "You been through this before?"
Once.
He said, before settling in and laying his head back on the headrest.
Get some sleep. It'll be okay.
I looked out the window and looked at the night sky. After a while, I fell asleep. I still have gaps in my memory from when I fell asleep to when I woke up 2 weeks later. All these years later, and I've tried everything from deep meditation to hypnotherapy. Hell, my wife even got me to see a neurologist that specializes in dementia. I've regained a decent amount, but there are still gaps. I'll do my best to try and recount what happened. Where there's still gaps, I'll do my best to try and fill them in. I asked if Will experienced the same thing. He said he did, but something never sat right with me. Whenever I asked him about what happened after we fell asleep, he always said he didn't remember with the casual look on his face. The first few times I asked, I didn't notice. About 2 years after the incident, what we ended up calling that night, Will and I were in my backyard drinking. About halfway through a bottle of whiskey, I asked him if he remembered anything. Now, it could have been the whiskey that lowered his usually stoic demeanor. Either that or I wasn't as drunk as I thought. You sure you don't remember?
Fucking hell. Jay, the only thing I remember is falling asleep in the car and then waking up.
His face stayed the same it always did. But when I looked in his eyes, I noticed something I've seen in the eyes of many people before. Hell, even my own, but never him. Will was afraid of something. The look in his eyes kept me up at night for a while. I had only ever seen Will show two emotions on his face: anger and happiness. Even then, these were rare occurrences when they did happen. Will's eyes always reflected how he was feeling. When he was angry, the green color in his eyes darkened. When he was happy, they would be a shade lighter than normal. What kept me up was that when I saw the fear in his eyes, they had these swirls of black, almost like his pupils were bleeding their nothingness into his iris. It was the first time I saw this in his eyes. I only ever saw it again one more time. I woke up in my room 2 weeks after the incident. After explaining everything to my wife, Mary, she didn't believe me. I couldn't blame her. Who disappears for 2 weeks and just shows up saying, "Hey, I saw some really weird, unexplainable shit and was taken away by Homeland Security. But I don't remember anything that happened the last 2 weeks. How you doing?" I sounded like I lost it. She made me go to counseling a few months, and it did help with some things, but I still didn't have any memory of those 2 weeks. She was a lot more distant after I came back, and we went through a rough patch. After some couples counseling, she suggested we try some alternative medicine to get my memory back. There was this feeling inside that remembering was not the solution. When I tried guided meditation, I heard a voice in one of my sessions that caused me to snap out of the meditation when it spoke. "Jay will return." It was the same voice from the recording. I told Mary about the voice and where I recognized it from. After that, she filmed the next meditation session. Apparently, I was muttering to myself throughout the session. I heard the voice again and again, and I snapped out of the meditation. Mary was frozen. Her face was white and she was crying. "What happened? Mary, what's wrong?" "Just listen." She handed me her phone. I hit play and watched myself sit in this empty room. I was facing away from Mary and there was silence, until about 5 minutes into the video. "Mary, Mary, Mary," a female voice spoke. I paused the video and looked back at Mary. "Who is that? Did someone walk in?" Mary shook her head and pointed to the phone. I looked back down and continued watching. The voice spoke again. "Ryan was the message. D was the payment." I felt my blood run cold as I watched me turn around. My mouth was open but not moving, like the voice was being projected out of me. "Jay will return." The video ended. "What the fuck is happening, Jay?" Mary sobbed. "I have no clue, but I need to know what the fuck happened during those 2 weeks. There just has to be an answer there, and I need to know." Mary nodded and buried her face in my shoulder. We agreed that meditation wasn't working for regaining memory and did more to scare us than help. She convinced me to go to a neurologist that specializes in TBI, dementia, and amnesia. They ran some tests, but I came back as normal and they said they couldn't help me. After that, she got me in to see a hypnotherapist. I was skeptical, but desperate enough to try anything. The thing that's cool about hypnotherapy, at least the one I went to, is that they have this whole professional video recording set up and you get the option to keep a copy of the recording of your sessions. Of course, I opted to get a copy of all the recordings. They also come with a professional transcript of everything. The following is a transcription of my first session. Carrie.
It is June 2018. My name is S. Carrie, clinical hypnotherapist. Licensed in hypnotherapy in Illinois State. License number 302456. State your name for the record, please.
Hi, my name is H.J.
Okay, now that we have the introductions out of the way, what's been going on?
I went through a pretty traumatic event about 6 months ago. I was gone for 2 weeks and I don't remember anything that happened during that time.
So the goal is to remember what happened in those 2 weeks?
Yes.
I think I can help. Although, I do have to let you know that I cannot guarantee anything.
Understood.
Are you ready to get started?
Yeah, I am.
Good. Today we're going to start with what's called regression hypnotherapy. This should help us with revisiting those 2 weeks and hopefully bring back some memories.
Sounds good.
Go ahead and get comfortable. You can lie down or remain seated. Whatever puts you in a most relaxed state.
Jay lies down, then sits back up. Okay, I'm ready.
Good. Now I want you to lay your head back and focus on the ceiling tile.
Okay. Jay lays his head back. Like this?
Yes. Now, take a deep breath and hold it in. While you breathe in, I want you to think back on a time when you were most relaxed. And breathe out slowly through your mouth. And while you breathe out, I want you to relax your body. Breathe in and hold. Now I want you to close your eyes and picture that time when you were most relaxed. And breathe out slowly. Feel yourself sinking into the couch.
Jay has let his arms drop to his sides.
Good. I'm going to count backwards from 10 now. Breathe in and hold. 10. Breathe out slowly, relaxing deeper into the couch. 9. Breathe in and hold. 8. Breathe out slowly. Feel yourself falling into a deep sleep. 7. Breathe in and hold. Breathe out slowly. 6. Breathe in and hold. 5. In and hold. 4. And out. I want you to picture the last thing you remember before the missing 2 weeks. 3. Now when I get to 1, you will put yourself back to that memory. 2. In and out. 1. Can you tell me where you are?
I'm in the back seat of this blacked out SUV, staring at the stars through the window.
Good. Now take me back to the end of that drive. Where are you now?
I'm in a concrete room sitting at a table.
Is there anyone in the room with you?
No, I'm alone. Looking around, there's a pane of glass on the wall to the right of me. I can hear the hum of a speaker system, but no voices. Just breathing.
Are you able to move around?
I think so. Fuck!
What's happening now?
I heard the door handle. I think someone's coming in. Jay is now looking at the door to the office. Who are you? Jay is turning his head as if he's watching somebody walk from the door to in front of him. What do you want from me? Where's Will? And more importantly, where the fuck am I?
Who are you speaking with?
That doesn't tell me shit. Who the fuck are you? Jay blankly stares at Carrie.
Jay.
Jay must remember. Jay will return. It has been noted as important by the hypnotherapist to specify that Jay's mouth was unnaturally wide open while a voice spoke through him.
What the fuck are you?
Unintelligible screaming. End of Session 1. The footage abruptly ended after I screamed, and I don't remember any of this. I think Carrie just wanted me out of the office because when I came to, she was shaking and wouldn't answer any questions I had. After a few weeks of avoiding my calls and always being out of office, when I went in person to the office, Carrie called me. All she said when I answered the phone was,
Tomorrow, 2 o'clock. Get rest and plan to be out of work for a couple of days.
I called the jail and let them know I was going to be out sick for a couple of days. Mary drove me to Carrie's office and we walked inside. Hi, checking in for my appointment? Last name Jay? I said to the woman at the front desk. Carrie sat up from the chair and looked at me and Mary. Her eyes were bloodshot and her hair was disheveled. She was rough.
You are the only appointment I have for the next week. I've been reviewing the recording from your first session over and over again. I spoke with my mentor and sent it for review to multiple different experts.
Mary and I shared a look of confusion. Carrie, what are you talking about? I don't remember anything from that appointment.
Mary had the same voice I did. Same messages I got too. There was an addition this time.
What was it? Mary asked.
Jay must remember, followed by Jay will return.
Mary grabbed my arm and sat down. I said that? I asked.
No, well, yes, but no. It was just like the meditation video that Mary showed me. You opened your mouth, but something spoke through you.
Well, what now?
Right. Well, like I said, I spoke with a lot of people since our last appointment. We're gonna try something different.
I'll try anything at this point.
We're gonna do what we're meant to refer to as a marathon session. Normally sessions are only supposed to last about an hour, maybe 2.
Carrie said, while digging through notes scattered on the desk in front of her.
This is going to be multiple 4-hour sessions. Essentially, we aren't going to stop until we get to the end of those 2 weeks.
Let's get started. I'm ready now. Mary gave me a hug and a kiss before leaving. Just call me when you're done. She wanted to stay, but Carrie insisted she go. After she left, Carrie led me into her office and we got started. Only took 4 sessions, but now I remember mostly everything. After waking up in the interrogation room, a man in a suit walked in.
Officer J, glad to see you're awake.
What do you want from me? Where's Will? And more importantly, where the fuck am I? The man sat down in the chair across the table.
I'm nobody. Your friend is fine. Probably having a nice nap. All you need to know is that you are safe.
He put a folder on the table in front of me and pulled out a notepad.
I have a few questions for you. How you answer them depends on how quickly we can move on with our investigation, and you can just forget about all of this.
When I looked at his face, he was expressionless until he said I could forget. As he said that, I could see a slight smirk and a look of amusement on his face. That doesn't tell me shit. Who the fuck are you? Just then, he nodded to the window beside us.
There's no need for that, Jay.
The door to my left opened and a man in a lab coat walked in. Who is that? I said. I was trying to stand up when I felt hands on my shoulders forcing me back down into the chair. When I looked around, I saw 2 men in full riot gear. What the fuck? I haven't done anything wrong. The man in the lab coat pulled a vial of clear liquid and a syringe from a box he sat on the table.
This will help you calm down and give us answers,
the man in the suit said. You haven't even asked me any questions. The suit looked annoyed. He sat back in his chair and nodded to the man in the lab coat.
Look, I've done this a lot over the years. Whenever anyone starts the way you have, we end up going to this method eventually. I'm trying to save time and get some straight answers, not some bullshit. It takes about 30 seconds to take effect.
I felt the needle go into my arm. Once completed with the injection, the 3 other men in the room with us left. After a minute, there was a warm feeling that poured over my body. It felt like putting on clothes fresh out of the dryer. What do you want to know?
Walk me through what happened last night.
I took him through everything that happened. The first perimeter check with Val, finding Ryan, and walking for what felt like miles to the clearing. I stopped when I got to the part of being swarmed by the footsteps. We stood there with our backs to the sapling. I could hear the footsteps all around us, and they were getting closer and closer. Then everything went black. The man in the suit, who had been writing notes while I spoke, sat back and looked at me curiously.
What happened right before it went black?
I felt a sharp pain in my head.
Think back to the pain. Describe it.
You know that feeling when you hear a sharp whistle? Like that really sharp pain in your head?
I do. Is that all you remember?
I thought hard about that moment. Suddenly I was able to see it. Whoa, what was in that cocktail you guys shot me up with? It's like I can see everything playing in front of me, just slow down. The suit continued writing notes.
Never mind that. Focus. Is there anything new you notice?
I do. I felt my heart drop when I saw it. Corporal D is whistling.
And you didn't know that before?
No. Like I said, I just remember the pain and then everything going black.
Why is Corporal D whistling significant?
When he asked this, I got the feeling that he was looking for a specific answer. I never said it was significant, just that it was something that I didn't notice before. He pulled a paper out of the folder and slid it to me.
Where do you think the rules came from? Rule number 1, don't whistle at night.
I picked up the paper and immediately saw the unmistakable title. 5 rules every officer must follow to survive graveyard. This one was old. The page was stained by the oil of years' worth of fingers touching it. This is the original, isn't it? The suit nodded.
Look closely at it. Notice anything different about the copy you were given?
I looked it over carefully. All the rules were there. The wording wasn't any different than what I saw before. That was until I got to the very bottom of the page. Created by Agent Smith, J. 1975. When I looked up, I saw the suit was watching me. I looked closely at him and noticed his hair was white and his face wore the wrinkles of years of stress. "You're Agent Smith, aren't you?" He smiled with amusement and chuckled softly.
Yes, that's me.
"Do you know what the woman wants with us?" His face dropped.
No.
He was cut off by the sound of wet footsteps approaching the door. "Wrap it up, Smith," a voice said over the speaker. The footsteps stopped. I looked at Smith. He looked terrified. The room fell silent. After a minute, there was a high-pitched laugh. Immediately after, there were 2 loud smacks on the wall by the door. "Jay will return," the voice spoke again. Smith looked at the window.
Fuck! Get us out of here!
The lights went out. In the room, there was only the faint red glow of the security lights pouring through the doorframe. "Smith, what the fuck is going on?"
I don't have time to explain right now. We need to leave. Let's go.
Smith motioned to the window. "How are we?" I was cut off by the sounds of screaming coming from the other side of the door. "Jay will return," the voice continued. That's when we saw the shadow of the legs standing at the door. There was a loud bang on the door, and to our horror, when I looked at it, there was the bulge of a dent in the metal. Another loud bang and the door shook. I looked at Smith, who was desperately trying to break the glass. Through the darkness, I could see figures on the other side doing the same. "I don't think we have much time, Smith. That door can't take much more," I said, panicking. Another bang, and the door bowed at the top, and I could see the ceiling tiles just outside were coated in blood. "Jay will return," it spoke again. I grabbed the chair I was sitting in and began smashing the window with it. There was another loud bang on the door. I looked back to see the damage and noticed that the door was almost open. Smith grabbed the other chair and looked at me.
On the count of 3. Ready?
I nodded. 1,
2.
Smith said while holding the chair up. We both yelled 3, swinging the chairs with everything in us. The window shattered. Bits of tempered glass covered the floor. Just as we put the chairs down, the air was filled with the sound of blood-curdling screams pouring through the door. As we climbed through the window, Smith pointed to a slot in the window frame that housed a thick metal door.
Get clear of the window!
He yelled. I could barely hear him over the screams. I jumped to my feet in time to turn around and see the door fly open. As the metal door slid into place where the window was, I saw what broke the door down. It was the woman from the woods. "Jay will return!" she yelled as she bolted to the window. The speed she traveled at was unnatural and quicker than I could process. She was already at the window. Smith grabbed me as the metal slammed shut. Smith yelled, "Let's go," and I turned around and ran with him and a group of people through the door behind us. "Jay will return!" the woman shouted. I looked over my shoulder to see her standing in the room we just came from. "What?" I stammered. "How?" When I looked back ahead, I saw everyone else had stopped. Before I could react, I ran into Smith. He didn't even budge an inch. It felt like running into a wall. "Shit, why did you stop running?" Everyone was standing in the middle of the hallway. I looked around and counted 4 people, 3 men and a woman, all in suits. They were all frozen and shaking in fear. "Jay, don't run," the woman in the suit said. I looked straight ahead and saw that the woman was standing 10 feet in front of us. Something felt off. When I looked past the woman in front of us, I saw what caused the 2 thuds on the wall earlier. "Oh my God," I said. The 2 men in riot gear that held me down earlier were pinned to the wall on either side of the door. The woman had taken their batons and driven it through their chest and into the wall, holding them up about 2 feet off of the ground. They were cut up to the point of almost being unrecognizable. On the wall above the door, written in their blood, was, "Jay will return." "What do you want from me?" I yelled. Immediately after, every light flickered and went out, one by one until it was pitch black. "Where's the emergency lights?" one man asked. There was a deafening scream, followed by the sounds of footsteps. It was the same footsteps I heard in the clearing. "Jay will return." The lights came back on with a loud click. The woman was gone.
Who's still breathing?
"I am," I answered. When I looked around, though, it was just me and Smith. "Where's everyone else?" The 2 bodies were still in the wall in front of us, but there was no sign of the group we were just with.
No clue. There's not even a trace of anyone else.
We walked around the corner and heard coughing. "You hear that too, right?" Smith nodded and opened the door to his left.
Hey, you okay?
The room was dark and I couldn't see who Smith was talking to. "Who is it?" I asked. Just then I saw Will walk through the doorway.
Holy shit, you're alive?
Will asked. "Why would you think otherwise?"
The woman broke down your door. All I could hear after that was screaming. When I finally got out of the room, she had just finished with the 2 standing guard. I closed the door and tried to hide. Next thing I knew, Smith here opened the door.
Great reunion, but we need to fucking go.
We followed Smith through the maze of hallways and doors. We finally arrived at a big red one. "Is this the way out?"
Yeah.
Smith said. He walked over to a panel on the side of the door and pressed a button.
Let's hope it's not on lockdown.
A siren alarmed and then the door began to open. When the door opened enough to see outside, my stomach dropped. There was a dirt trail leading from the door into a dense forest.
What in the fresh hell is this?
Will asked. The light from the room we stood in lit up the trail of blood that started at the door and led off the trail and into the woods. I heard a voice in my head, "Jay will return." I looked at Will and could tell by the look he gave me we received the same message. As we stepped through the door, I woke up in Carrie's office. Holy shit!
That was pretty intense.
Carrie said. She was shutting off the camera.
You were under for about 3 hours.
Why didn't we go the full 4?
Give me 1 second. I need to pull up the footage to see if the camera picked it up.
Okay. She pulled up the last 10 minutes of the recording. All was normal. I was talking about what I was seeing. "Jay will return," the woman's voice whispered. It was faint, but clear. Unlike last time, there was no evidence it came from me, and the camera covered basically the whole room, including Carrie. It was clear she didn't say anything. "That wasn't you, was it?" I asked.
Of course not.
Just as she put the camera back, we heard the voice again. "Jay must remember." We froze and looked at each other. The room went dark, and I could hear the faint sound of drumming coming from somewhere inside the room. It went on for what felt like eternity, but in reality was only 10 minutes. The lights came back on, and I saw Will standing in the doorway of the office. His eyes were rolled back, only exposing the whites of his eyes. His mouth hung open, and he walked with unnatural and jerky movements into the room.
"Jay will return,"
Will said in a voice that wasn't quite his. "What the fuck, Will? What's wrong with you?" The lights went out, and I heard a hollow thud on the ground. When the lights turned back on, Will was gone. I looked at Carrie and fell onto the couch. Carrie sat on the ground against the wall. We agreed to take a short rest before starting the next session.
Hey, Jay. You ready?
Carrie's voice woke me up. I sat up. How long was I out? Carrie was setting up the camera.
2 hours. Can you go and make sure the front door's locked?
Yeah, I said. When I walked into the lobby and saw that it looked completely normal, the door was already locked. Hey, was the door already locked? I yelled behind me.
Yeah. I locked it after Mary left. Why?
It's still locked. The silence was deafening. We both knew what we saw and what this meant.
I'll check back here. Can you walk through the front areas and see if there's any sign of Will?
I immediately got to work checking the windows and the door, just in case I missed anything on my first glance. Yeah, I made my way to the front desk. Everything was as it was. I remember thinking, how the hell did Will get in and out without a trace? Lobby and front desk are clear, I said. I got to the last room I hadn't checked yet, the bathroom. I knocked on the door before opening it. No answer. I braced for the worst as I turned the door handle. When I swung the door open, it was dark. I inched my way forward, my heart pounding with every move, waiting for the motion sensor to kick the light on. My heart nearly shot out of my chest when it turned on. I looked around the small room and saw nothing. Bathroom is clear,
All clear back here too.
Carrie yelled. I walked back into her office and sat down on the couch.
Was there any sign of someone coming in at all?
Nothing. How about back here?
Same.
She said. We sat in silence for a moment before Carrie leaned forward and grabbed her notepad.
Only one thing left to do.
I nodded. All right, I'm ready. With that, we started the second session. Hey everybody, Kevin here from Nightmares Nightly. So, sorry to leave this one on a bit of a cliffhanger there. This story is about a 4-hour story, and while y'all know that I don't like to do part 1s, part 2s, anything like that. I did them years ago, I stopped a long time ago, I don't like to do them anymore. I hate them as a viewer, as a listener myself, but this is about a 4-hour story, and whenever I post anything longer than, 3 hours, it doesn't get a lot of clicks. This story has taken 40 hours or more to put together with 8 different voice actors, so I want this video to get the most amount of exposure as possible, and that 2-hour mark seems to kind of be the longest people like to click on videos for the most part, because once it gets longer than that, people think they're compilations or something, and they don't want to click on it because they don't read didn't read the title, but they see how long it is. Oh, 4 hours must be a compilation, not going to listen to that. Then they don't click on it. Then YouTube takes that as a signal, and then they say, okay, don't show this to more people, which really sucks and kills the video. So I have this. I'll release the second part probably in about a week or so. And then, a couple weeks after that, I'll release the whole thing put together. So bear with me here. I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for watching, listening. If you did enjoy this story, please share it, subscribe, leave a comment for me, help boost its visibility in the algorithm. This video took a long time to put together. Part 2 will be out soon. You won't have to wait too long. And then, like I said, I'll put the compilation out. But I appreciate you guys listening. I hope you like the story. And we'll be back soon. And as always, thanks for listening, everybody. Some years ago, I worked with a tunneling crew. A job like that draws all kinds of people. Sure, it boils down to one guy holding the figurative shovel, but another guy has to point where to dig, and yet another guy has got to get the dirt out. On a larger scale, it can easily get out of hand without proper management. Our crew was working on expanding a subway tunnel. It wasn't anything we couldn't handle, but my life was in a bit of a mess at the moment. My wife and I had just had our first kid, and I was having trouble keeping up with the new lifestyle. My wife was a trooper, but no matter what I did, I always felt like I was doing something wrong. That baby must have been the most patient one ever, as I fumbled with the most basic chores. I'd tuck her in too tight or get the temperature or the formula wrong. It was just one mess after another, and that's after working a 10-hour shift. The only thing I got right was putting her to sleep. I'd tuck my hand behind her little head, shush her and sing. She'd go out like a light. Bam, down for the count. That one thing sort of made up for all my other mistakes. I have to thank my mom for the tips someday. It's an old song. It goes a little something like, "Oh, I, fuff, my little one." Like a bolt of lightning from a clear blue sky, the subway tunnel gig was canceled. We got to work and there was a big sign telling us to go home. I called my manager but didn't get an answer. I called the guy at the top and the number was disconnected. I was standing there with a crew of 8 other guys looking at me. Someone kept asking if we were getting paid, or what to do about our gear. Some of it was still locked away in the tunnels. The hours passed and we didn't know if we still had a job. When I finally got hold of my shift manager, he didn't have a lot to say. "They're shutting us down. I'm sorry. Gotta start looking for a new job." Not the kind of thing you want to hear when you just had your first kid. The whole crew was looking at me for answers, and I didn't have anything comforting to say. Can't sing those guys to sleep. I told them the truth. We were out of a job, and no one seemed to know what the hell was going on. I kept calling management to demand some answers, but all numbers were either disconnected or put me on an infinite hold. It wasn't until I wormed my way into one of the numbers from my boss's boss that I got anywhere. Some corporate big shot who had his name on a lot of papers and not a speck of dirt on his shoes. I was about to give him a piece of my mind when suddenly he changed tone. "We're looking for a crew. There's another job in the area. Not tunneling, but should be within your skill set." "And how do we know it won't be shut down like the last one?" "You don't, but it's the best you got. It pays well. Real well. I can bring all you guys in starting tomorrow. What do you say?" I said the only thing I could. I said yes. It was tough to come home that day. I'd been surrounded by this ceaseless vitriol all afternoon. One of the guys had been crying in the porta potty. This was supposed to be a long-term gig, and now we were all on shaky ground. Whatever this new job entailed didn't exactly calm us down, but at least we could keep our heads up a little longer. I don't think I did a single thing right that evening. I forgot to wash my hands when I picked up my baby girl, getting her hair wispy and a little dirty. I changed her diaper but couldn't get the thing to sit right, and I think I used too much powder. It was just one thing after another. It wasn't until I sat down to watch the news that I finally got to do the one thing I was good at, singing her to sleep. One verse and she was out. "Oh, I, fuff." My wife joined me on the couch, speaking in a hushed voice. She was just as worried about me as the job, but I could tell she was trying to stay positive. She asked all kinds of questions, like what we were doing, and for how long, and with what people. And I didn't have an answer for any of it. Not unlike the talking heads on the TV. All I could say is that we had a time, a place, and a generous paycheck. "Just be careful," she said, giving me a kiss on the cheek. "Our girl can't sleep without you." Doing tunnel work is rough for a number of reasons. In summer, you're melting away in the heat. In the autumn, you're knee-deep in rainwater. In winter, well, you don't do a lot of digging in the winter. The ground gets frozen and can mess up the equipment. Depends on the job site, I guess. We were nearing the end of the season. The last dig of the summer is the one you finish just before you go on vacation, and my guys have been robbed of theirs. I knew of at least one guy who had to cut his trip to Tallahassee. He wouldn't shut up about it. It was better than having no job at all, but the disappointment was immeasurable. We'd been promised stable work for years to come. Now we were fighting for scraps. The location turned out to be a construction site. Not a dig, mind you. There's a difference. The place was roughly the size of a football field, lined with chain link fence wrapped in yellow plastic. There were all kinds of construction tools lying around, seemingly abandoned. There was even a bulldozer. We waited for about an hour before someone showed up. There was this one guy with protective glasses and a hard hat, our supposed foreman. He seemed friendly enough, probably someone a bit further down the career ladder. He came up to us and clapped his hands to get our attention. "Everyone feeling all right?" he asked, throwing his arms out. There was a murmur, but no one was particularly enthusiastic about the whole thing. We weren't a construction crew. Then again, at that point, we had no idea what kind of crew we were supposed to be. "We're gonna go through all the details in a bit. I just want to say, I know this ain't ideal. We didn't have a choice in the matter. That said, if this works out, we're gonna have a lot more work for you going forward. So let's get started, yeah?" That lifted our spirits a little. I saw a couple of nods and the hint of a smile. Maybe things would work out. We walked into the site. He showed us this spot at the far end, right next to a jackhammer. There was a hole about 3 feet deep, 6 feet across. It looked like they dug it out with shovels by hand. In the middle of the hole, there was a rock formation like a white spike poking out of the ground. It was roughly the length of my arm. "This is what we found. This particular mineral is uncommon in this part of the country. It's mainly used in pharmaceuticals." "What's it called?" "Pilalith. It's used in something called Compound 5, life-saving stuff." He went on to explain the process. Essentially, this construction site was found to be littered with Pilalith minerals. The entire site needed to be dug out carefully, and the minerals had to be extracted as a whole. 2 guys were on standby to measure, catalog, and mark down each extracted sample down to the milligram. The tools were oddly specific. For example, we couldn't use jackhammers. We had to slowly work the base of the mineral with a portable water jet cutter. We couldn't touch the minerals without wearing rubber gloves, and we had to put out sprinklers near every active dig spot to suppress mineral dust. That, and there was a gas mask mandate. "It's important that we don't breathe this stuff in. You don't want that." By the end of our first day, we had dug up 5 of those spike things. They were all carefully placed in a vacuum container and sealed with silicone spray. All that work for what equates to a suitcase of rocks? At the end of our shift, one of the guys noticed something funny. Technically, we were right next to our abandoned subway gig. Out through one door, in through another. It took some time to get used to the new setup. We had to work with a lot of protective gear, and we kept getting soaked by the water jet and sprinklers. Working in that kind of environment gives you all kinds of uncomfortable aches, especially when you need to have a gas mask. The mix of heat and water kept fogging up the glass, sucking the salt from my skin and stinging my eyes. It was exhausting. We usually managed to get somewhere around 6 to 10 Pilaliths a day, depending on the weather and how fast we could get to the base of the mineral. They were all roughly 3 feet down, but a few of them were a bit smaller and some were a bit bigger. There was one of them that was so tall that it poked out of the ground, but it had turned a metallic gray. We sent a picture of it to the foreman and he said it was a no-go. "It's gone bad. Cut it, leave it, don't matter." And every night when I came home, I could barely stand. I fell asleep in the shower once, waking only when the water turned cold. I'd remember to eat just because my hands wouldn't stop shaking. It was a strange feeling, and my wife could tell I wasn't doing all right. I felt bad not being able to keep up with the housework, but hey, at least I could sing my baby to sleep. That I could do. The fact that the site was so close to our old tunnel job was really strange. It was literally a stone's throw away, but cities can get like that sometimes. It might take 20 to 30 minutes in traffic to get from one street to another, but walking there at a brisk pace takes only a couple of minutes. I hadn't even thought about it until they pointed it out. The job was going to take weeks, and maybe months at the pace we were going. We got the go-ahead to bring in some more guys, but it was hard to find people for a temp job at short notice. I managed to get a hold of 4 more in total, but trying to bring them up to speed was a hassle. I kept getting all these questions that I couldn't answer. For example, why couldn't we just dig up the whole site and then filter out the Pilalith later? We could have done it all in about a week tops. And yeah, they were right. But we weren't allowed to do that. And what the hell is a polalith anyway? After a full week of working with the stuff, we were getting into a sort of a rhythm. We split up between surface testing, excavation, cutting, and transport. I was one of the cutters. I stood in a dirt pit with brown water up to my knees, trying not to get my fingers blown off as the drainage pump flopped around. Now, I'm good at what I do, but we were working without proper routine and oversight. It was the Wild West. First accident happened 8 days into the job. One of the guys, and can't remember his name, got his face dust sprayed with polalith. The sprinkler stopped working and he had to change his filter after a cut. All we saw was how he stepped away, took the mask off, and had a seizure. They had to carry him away and wash the dust off with a hose. He got back to work after a couple of days, but I don't think he was ever the same. There was something off about him. Not quite a 1,000-yard stare, but he would tilt his head up at strange angles every now and then like he was looking at something beyond the clouds. That, and he stopped complaining about his canceled Tallahassee trip. The second accident was one of the other cutters. He'd just finished a smaller spike when I saw him dip one of his legs down. It looked like he'd just stepped wrong, but there was this look of genuine surprise on his face. And then we heard a pop, like something exploding, and the guy screamed like a wounded animal. This repetitive shriek over and over as he clutched his leg. When we got to him, I could see most of his foot and part of his leg had been crushed. Not just a sprain or something, but mangled. You could barely tell there was a foot at the end. It looked like cloth-covered meat. When they carried him off, he was delirious. I heard him mumble as they shut the ambulance door. Breathing. 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 It had been any other job, or if it had been any other job, we'd have called it quits long ago. One workplace accident, it happens. But two? And on such short notice? No, now that doesn't happen. Problem was, it felt like the big wigs were one step away from shutting us down all over again. They hounded us with that fact every chance they got. The foreman would slide in a comment about it when he could. Like at the end of every shift, I gave him an update on our progress. He always asked if things had gone smoothly, and whenever I said it did, he'd just respond, "Good. Don't know how we could afford keeping this afloat if it didn't." Every damn time. So yeah, we had to make do. It was dirty work for dirty people, but what choice did we have? No one else was hiring, and getting the whole crew to another site on such short notice was impossible. You don't spend that kind of money on a whim, and there was no standing contract lurking around the corner. These kinds of jobs take months of planning and contract negotiation. You'll be eating well into your savings long before you could see a paycheck. We kept having trouble with our gear, too. Not just because things bend and break, that's normal. Wear and tear is part of the job. The problem was that we had no idea what kind of supports we were looking at, and most of our equipment was still at the tunnel site. We kept having trouble with the ground shifting. Sometimes when we dug out the polaliths, the dirt would collapse. It wasn't bad enough to hurt anyone, but it was frustrating. We had a bunch of sandbags and supports on the old dig site, but we weren't allowed to get them. I kept hearing things around the site. The guy who'd inhaled the dust complained about losing his sense of taste. The guy who had his foot crushed was admitted to psychiatric care. Another guy kept talking about how he found this black door at his apartment complex that he couldn't remember seeing before. Just a whole set of strange rumors. Every day felt like walking into a ghost story. Someone had something eerie to say. My first unusual experience was nowhere near as dramatic. I was working the water jet cutter when I accidentally angled it downward. I left it on a little too long and cut into the rocks surrounding the mineral. At first, I thought I'd hit a sewer line, but that would mean it was inches from the surface. There was no way that was true. But the ground erupted with this foul, black, organ-like ichor. Like fish guts and mineral oil. I got out of there real quick, and the moment I stepped out of the hole, the dirt collapsed around me, almost like the ground shook a little. On our 3rd week, some people got sick. We thought it was a stomach bug going around, but we figured out the common denominator. Everyone who'd gotten sick had regularly eaten dairy products for lunch or breakfast. Turns out, on closer inspection, that a lot of dairy spoiled around the dig site. Like, to the point where we could track it just by looking at it. If we left a chocolate milk out in the open, the damn thing will be solid white mold before the end of the day. So yeah, no dairy on the dig site. I remember once in the break room, 6 of us were sitting around just chatting, and this one guy joins us with yogurt. He knows we're not supposed to eat dairy, but he doesn't care anymore. He's staring straight ahead, shoveling spoonfuls into his mouth. I don't need to look to see that it's gone bad. I can smell it. We can all smell it. And he just sits there chewing it down like he doesn't have a care in the world. You can't eat that stuff. You'll get sick. The guy turns his head and licks the container clean. He doesn't even blink. You don't think what we're doing is sick? You think this is okay? It's a job. Calm down. We're all sick in the fucking head, the guy says, clutching his head. Fucking parasites. He didn't stay long. After starting the 3rd fight that same day, we had to let him go. And coming home every day was like coming up for air after a long dive. Everything felt brighter, and I'd happily do whatever was asked of me. Changing diapers? No problem. Taking out the trash? Wonderful. Anything and everything was better than staying another damn minute at the site. Thinking about going back the next day made me feel like a rock in the pit of my stomach. I'd look in the bathroom mirror, trying to convince myself to get through one more day. But while I might not be the best at being a homebody, my wife rightfully pointed out that I was doing worse than usual. She was right. I was. It wasn't a conscious thing, but once I noticed it, I couldn't ignore it. For example, I would put all the dishes into a vertical pile instead of the dishwasher. There was just something hypnotic about arranging them in a pattern. I would sometimes stand in front of the open refrigerator holding my hands out like I was warming them by a fire. It got to the point where I was scared to be alone with my baby girl. What if I forgot her on the changing table? I couldn't live with myself if she got hurt. And still, we needed the money. Rent was going up, expenses were going up, and we needed a new set of tires for the car. We'd already sold off our spare car. We couldn't afford to go without one. It was bad enough that we already had to share. I remember this one night, as I was standing by my baby's crib. She was having trouble going back to sleep, so I leaned in to sing. Problem is, I couldn't remember the words. I'd never written them down or anything, so there was a sudden sense of loss in me. Like I'd forgotten something that was a part of me, instead of just a song. And my girl, she could tell. She was screaming her little heart out, begging me to remember. And I stood there opening and closing my mouth like a fish out of water, trying to explain that the words just weren't there. I'm sorry, I said, shaking my head. I'm so sorry, baby. When she fell asleep that night, it wasn't because she felt safe and cared for. It was exhaustion, just like me. By that time, coming to the site felt like walking into purgatory. One guy is off in the corner hurling his guts out. One guy's crying on a bench. One is lying on his back looking up at the sky. 2 guys don't even show up for work. We barely make progress. What little we get is mostly from what we'd started the previous shift. Around lunch, one guy was taking off his protective gear and going to town on a palaver like he was a sick cow on a salt lick. We had to pry him off and send him home. He laughed the whole way. By late afternoon, I was the only one working on this particular dig. This damn thing was big. Big enough that I'd have trouble lifting it by myself. I had to dig a little deeper than usual to get to the base, and I wasn't paying as much attention as I should have. By the time I pulled out the water cutter, the cable dislodged something and the entire hole collapsed with me in it. I was buried under the dirt. Thank God for all that gear. I was lying face down in the dirt, and I could breathe a little thanks to my gas mask and the porous ground, but it was like sucking air through a straw. I barely knew what was up or down. No matter which direction I pushed, it felt like something was pushing back. It's like the ground was trying to absorb me. I wasn't down for long, but in that moment, I felt this intense sense of dread. Not just a claustrophobic panic, but something else. I could imagine myself being stuck there, solidified as a relic in eternal stasis, like watching myself fossilize. All sense of time and passage of the world melted away. I could imagine the years flying by, leaving me helpless. If I'd been down there 1,000 years, would I even want to get back up? By the time they pulled me out, I was screaming. I don't remember, but I was. Apparently, I was begging for them to put me back in the ground. At the end of the day, I was sitting across from one of the machine operators. He was trying to have a glass of water, but he ended up throwing it out. It tasted funny. "We got to do something about the equipment. We have tens of thousands of dollars still stuck in those tunnels. Hundreds of thousands, maybe. You think they're happy to leave it there?" he asked. "You honestly think they care?" "I care. Hell, I'll take it off their hands if they ain't using it." "You're not suggesting we steal from the company?" "What company? Do you even know who we're working for? You know what we're doing? You see any workers' comp going out to the guy who's saying everything tastes like gasoline?" I shook my head. I didn't like it, but he was right. He took off his hard hat, dropping it on the table. "I say we get our fair share, split it right down the middle. You in?" "I'm in." I told my wife I'd be late the next day. 3 guys volunteered to help pick up things after our shift. There was a fair chance that we wouldn't get anything, but at that point we didn't care. Some of us were just desperate enough to get a big paycheck to cash out and make a run for it. We didn't want to be there anymore. None of us did. We drove down to the tunnels and prepared ourselves. One guy brought a 2-wheeler, another brought flashlights, and one brought walkie-talkies. We were going to turn the power on, but it was easy to get lost down there. Half the map wasn't finished and most of the rooms were dead ends. You could get lost on the best of days and we were barely functional. We made our way into the tunnels, keeping in touch as we went. It didn't take long for us to find some personal items, but there was quite a bit more to it. We could tell others had been down there. There was a whole bunch of things we hadn't seen before. Some of it I could barely understand. For example, there was this one drill that looked like an 8-foot-long syringe on a rail leading to a hole in the wall. That's not what we were there for, but I couldn't help but raise my eyebrow at that. While the others found some gear, I decided to take a look a little further in. There was this one space I'd been working in just before we got shut down that I knew had a backpack full of seismic measuring equipment. It didn't take all that long for me to find my way back there, but the backpack was long gone. Figures. That thing alone was at least 25 grand. As I was about to head back to the others, I swept my flashlight across a black door. I didn't remember that ever being there. I checked in with the others over the walkie, and they were still trying to dislodge one of the backup drills. I had some time, so I decided to check it out. I stepped inside just as the walkie-talkie crackled to life again. "Got the power, hold on to something." Seconds later, there was a hum and a crackle. I swept my flashlight across the room, seeing nothing out of the ordinary. It was a small cube-shaped room with the furthermost wall being pale white dirt. I saw there was a light fixture overhead, so I searched for the walls for a switch. I found it and turned it on, just to see if there was something I'd missed. The moment the light came on, felt like staring into the sun. I hadn't realized how used I'd gotten to the dark. That, and the light seemed to be some kind of UV. It wasn't just bright, it was warm. The moment it turned on, I saw the wall shift. Not by much, just a twitch. Dirt don't move like that. The ground shook as people started calling out on the walkie. Someone was screaming about a burst water pipe. Another one kept going, "What the fuck?" over and over again. I could hear the sound of metal bending and breaking as support snapped, making the tunnels outside crumble. I could hear these blocks of stone, each one heavy enough to crush my car, falling like raindrops. The wall moved, the ground moved. I was standing still, watching solid concrete roll beneath me. The light flickered. A whole section of wall roiled like liquid, only to reveal this enormous glass-like surface. I stepped closer, watching these whirling colors slosh from left to right, up and down, like an organic membrane suspended in gelatin. Blue lines spreading out like petals of a sunflower. As I step back and take in the whole picture, my breath gets stuck in my throat. The entire wall is the bottom half of an eye, a bright blue eye adjusting to the sudden bright light. I've never felt anything like in that moment. It's like the sky keeps falling over and over, like you're taking a step back even though you're standing still, making the world feel smaller with every breath. I could barely understand it. My legs felt so small that I couldn't feel myself walking. The power cut out. The bright blue pupil disappeared, leaving the outline of the shape lingering in my mind's eye. The sounds of the outside world faded away. I could hear the screaming in the walkie like a distant whisper. I could sense the rumble as the tunnels collapsed. I could feel the weight of the organic slosh as a mass of nerves far larger than me moved at breakneck speed from left to right, displacing the air. "It's coming down!" someone cried in the walkie. "Get the fuck out, it's all coming down!" But I couldn't move. I looked straight ahead into the darkness and pushed my hand back towards the door. I couldn't open it. There was a blockage on the outside. The concrete ceiling was starting to crack. My mind pendulumed between sobering fear and a mind-gutting sense of hollowness. I was a father. I was nothing. I was being buried alive. I was pointless. All the while, I hear this surreal sound of something beyond my comprehension of scale starting to move, and I realize I'm going to die down there. I'm going to be crushed or left to suffocate. And there's this little voice in the back of my head whispering at me that there's a very real chance I don't come home tonight, that my baby girl isn't going to sleep well ever again. And I just break. I absolutely break. I slam my body against the door. I scream and shout and beat my fists on the metal sheeting. I step back and brace myself, throwing my weight at it, but it doesn't even budge. The voices on the walkie aren't even saying words anymore, having developed into a panicked screeching. I step away from the door towards the eye. I fumble in the dark, picking up a fistful of concrete to use as a weapon. I move closer, ready to plunge my fist into the surface of the eye when I notice something. I'm stepping in liquid. I didn't hear a water pipe burst, not in here. I fumble for my flashlight, and I barely manage to pick it up as my hands keep failing me, but as I turn it on, I realize there's a thin layer of water lining the floor, an oily kind of salt water. Looking up at the eye, I see it leaking at the edges. Tears? Something in me clicks. The rapid eye movement, the sudden sense of panic and collapse. It dawns on me that I've seen this before. I've seen it dozens of times. It's just like when my baby girl wakes up in the middle of the night looking for her papa. That's all it is. And I think about that moment when I was buried at the dig site with that sense of the world passing me by. I wouldn't want to wake from that. I wouldn't want to know which of my friends were dead or alive, which family members made it. I wouldn't want to know just how alone I really was. I'd rather stay a fossil. Maybe that was it. Maybe that was it the whole time. Maybe we've been cleaning the scalp of something and having a really, really bad dream. I turned off my flashlight and stepped a little closer. I could feel this thrumming movement coming from the membrane as nerves contracted, pushing out bucket after bucket of liquid. Meanwhile, I'm closing my eyes and thinking about an imaginary hand placed behind a tender head, fussing about going to sleep, wispy hair getting caught between my fingers. At that moment, the words returned to me. The lullaby. With a shaky voice, I sing them. A voice in the dark, hoping something impossible can hear me and find comfort. Oh, I, Fluff, my little one. Oh, I, Fluff, my little one. I sing it again and again and again. I'm imagining that little bundle in my arms and how it settles into a rhythm, how her breathing steadies with mine, a little hand wrapping around my finger, then letting go as the dreams take hold. And after a while, I realize the wall has stopped moving. It's just white dirt. Nothing is moving, collapsing, or breaking. It's just me in a dark room and my workmates trying to move a boulder outside the door. Something's gone back to sleep. When we got out, things had gone completely to shit. Car alarms were going off, street lights had died, fire hydrants were pouring out into the street. Waiting for us just outside were 2 patrol vehicles, ready to ask us some serious and uncomfortable questions. The whole ordeal was categorized as a local seismic event. The company decided not to press any charges. They just had us trespassed. But even that would eventually be overturned. See, they still needed someone to work the dig site. There was more palalas to cut, and there was no one around willing to do it. And honestly, who was more experienced working with this stuff than me and my crew? We had started to get the hang of it. We could make up our own rules. And now that I had an idea of what we were dealing with, I could do it in a way that wouldn't get us all killed. So yeah, we got back to work. I've been digging this stuff up for years now. We figured out a good routine and procedure, allowing us to rotate crew in a way that doesn't get us sent to the hospital. I got about 30 guys working with me. There's not a lot of demand for it, but what demand there is pays very well. I don't think you'll find any Craigslist postings for Palalith diggers anytime soon, but we're out there. Sometimes it just looks like a construction site. And sometimes they don't bother trying to hide it. People see a jackhammer and roll their eyes, hoping we won't stick around for long. My girl isn't a baby anymore, but in another sense of the word, she absolutely is. I managed to scrape together a pretty good life for her. I work weekdays along with every second and third weekend of the month, but I get the first week of the month completely off. Just 2 paid vacation weeks a year, though, but the hourly rates are just... I'll admit, I'm a bit spoiled. I could sign off on a new pool and it wouldn't break our budget. But I feel like I had to take a moment to look back at it all. Not just because it was a monumental day of my life, but because it changed something in me. I may be the smallest, most insignificant thing in whatever world this is, but I'm still here. I can still do something. And if I can get that one damn thing right, is that not enough reason to do it? I'm thinking, whenever I'm gray and gone, is my girl gonna remember the fancy vacations and the new car smell of our family Honda? Or is she gonna remember the times I sung her to sleep? I don't need an answer. I know it. I feel it. And somewhere deep underground, there's something that feels the same. Hey, what's up, guys? Kevin from Nightmares Nightly. I hope you liked that one. It was another Saturday story, who I really enjoy. This story was pretty cool. There's only really one qualm I have about it, and it's when he loses his first job, and then he gets the new job digging up these palalas. Also, by the way, it's probably, I have no idea, that's not even a fucking word, so I don't know, it's probably like, if it's not a real word, you can just make up however you want to pronounce it. Let's just say that, pillowlith, palalith, whatever. It was kind of a funny word. I felt weird saying it that way. It's probably not correct, but it's not even a real word, so who cares? When he lost his first job, and then he gets his new job, and they go, it pays well, and then he's like, yeah, it does pay well, and then, 10 minutes later, he's talking about how they had to sell his old car, and they have one car now, because they were scraping by, and I'm like, you're saying it pays well, but you gotta sell all your stuff, and y'all are having trouble with the bills, but that's actually the only problem, the little plot hole I had with it, and it doesn't really affect the plot. But so I enjoyed it. It was a cool story. It had a little bit of a Lovecraftian vibe to it at the end there with this, this earth creature that who knows how long it's been alive and it's just been slumbering beneath the earth. And they were, it seems like they were digging like growths from it, is kind of what I got. But I enjoyed it. Saturday's a really good guy, good author, and I hope y'all enjoyed it as well. And as always, thanks for listening, everybody.